This is LBC from Global. Leading Britain's conversation. Speak to Sadiq. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, takes your calls.
And good morning. It is 4 minutes after 10. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where the Mayor of London is limbering up in preparation of taking your calls. If you're tuning into this feature for the first time, then the conversation is driven almost entirely by calls, but I reserve the right to intervene or insist on sort of further detail or further answering. The number you need, as ever, is 0345 60973. You can, of course, text and tweet to your heart's content as well, and I will do my level best to include as many of your contributions as possible. But I think we should probably crack straight on. Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good to speak to you, James. As ever, looking forward to speaking to not just Londoners, but those from across the country, which is where we go for the first caller, actually. It's from Abbot's Langley, and it's Lance, I think. Lance, good morning.
Good morning, Sadiq. How are you?
I'm all right, you know. Well, but I'll review that answer after your question.
Yeah, right, Sadiq, my question is, I'm a window cleaner. I carry a lot of water in the back of my van. I'm based in Abbot Langley, so I can't get the scrappage thing. I do blocks of flats. So yesterday I drove into the ultra low emission zone, 50 metres, stopped my van all day long, cleaned the block of flats, finished the job, drive 50 metres out of the low emission zone. So basically, I've done 100 metres that day in the low emission zone. It's going to cost me £12.50. Is there any way around that? I mean, do you think that's fair? I mean, the mileage that I've done is 100 metres. I've got
sure.
several jobs like that. So I don't know,
Lance,
if...
So Lance, firstly, thanks for your question. Look, there are many window cleaners in London as well who simply can't use the tube, bus or public transport and need a vehicle to get around, which is why I expanded the support we give to vans, minibuses and cars. Unfortunately, I can't use London taxpayers' money to support people outside of our great city, including you. But what I've been doing is lobbying the government, saying, look, the government rightly is giving financial support to those in Bristol, Birmingham, Portsmouth, elsewhere. But they're refusing to give any financial support to either Londoners or those in the home counties like you who are doing a hard day's work and can't yet pivot towards a van that's newer than 7 years or a car that's newer than 17 years. So, Lance, I'm going to not give up in relation to lobbying the government for more support. The Surreys, the Hertfordshires, the Kents and others have also been making the same points you're making in relation to support for the home counties. But I hope you'll appreciate why I've got to focus the limited resources I have, and that's City Hall resources, not government resources, to Londoners. And I have recently announced for a small business, everyone who employs up to 50 people can receive support, 3 vans of support and £7,000, including support to retrofit their van. What I can't do, Lance, is use London taxpayers' money for non-Londoners. But I tell you who can, that's the government.
Do you think they would be doing this? Can we just run through, with your help, who started what? Because there was an ultra-low emission zone in place before you became mayor, or is that right?
So this government passed what's called an air quality directive, which required cities to clean up their air because most of the air pollution, and by the way, the air pollution is not inevitable, it's preventable, happens in cities. So the government says, listen, there's this directive now, you've got to clean up your air. The best way to clean up air is by clean air zones, and the government required cities to have clean air zones. We call them ultra-low emission zones. And they gave money towards cities like Bristol, Birmingham, Portsmouth, and other cities towards the clean air zone. The Tories lost the election in 2016, and I won the election. But before he stopped being the mayor, Boris Johnson announced he was going to bring in ultra-low emission zone and already brought in what's called a low emission zone. And so the point is, this was the direction of travel, but for reasons that probably only Rishi Sunak and the government can answer, they're refusing to give any support to London, even though they're requiring us, rightly by the way, to clean up our air, because the government commissioned a report, and the government's own report said across the country, up to 36,000 premature deaths a year, In London, it's around 4,000 premature deaths a year, but also at least a whole host of other health issues from children having stunted lungs, adults with a whole host of health issues from asthma to cancer, dementia to heart disease. So I support the government in their objectives. I'm asking them and imploring them to support us and people like Lance to make that transition.
So to be clear, if Lance lived on the outskirts of Bristol and was seeking to ply his window cleaning trade within the emission zone, even though he lived outside it, he would be in receipt of government help from central government.
Correct. The government help applies to other cities and regions around the country, excluding London and the southeast.
Okay, and it was in 2015 that Boris Johnson did a lap of honour after confirming the world's first ultra-low emission zone. What about
But also it's Boris Johnson who introduced the low emission zone, which applies to lorries for the entire Greater London. And so, clearly at that time, Boris Johnson and the Conservative government agreed of the need to clean up air. In fact, they introduced an air quality directive requiring cities and regions to do so.
Lars, a few people I hope you'll take this in the spirit that it's intended. A few people are suggesting either that you get a longer hose or that you park on the edge of the zone. And
I'll tell you what, I actually did think about that. I could probably, there's one block of flats, I could probably get it with my hose.
Cometh the hour, cometh the man.
Lance, listen, I appreciate James is just jesting and stuff, but listen, can I say I understand the challenge you're going through, and it's because of the concerns people like you raised in London. That I changed eligibility for the scrappage scheme. So what I've done is announced a scrappage scheme in January without government support, supporting micro businesses like yours in London, low-income families in London. In July, I expanded it to every single family in London who's got a child that receives child benefit. And after the court case, I expanded it further to give more support towards those who are retrofitting vehicles because it costs more than we originally thought, but also to give more support to those who need to buy a new van and scrap their old van, and expanded that support as well, because I do understand the concerns of people like you, Lance. I can help people like you in London. I just simply can't to those in Abbots Langley and outside London.
Have you been surprised by how ugly things have got, particularly in the last week? I don't know, I presume you saw the Evening Standard. It was almost like a wanted poster, wasn't it? Sadiq's suburban nightmare. Mayor's popularity in outer London at minus 24 with a week to go before ULEZ expansion. Front page of the Telegraph yesterday. I worry as a national radio station that we're sometimes a little bit too London-centric. The Daily Telegraph didn't have any such concerns yesterday. Daily Mail today, Khan said ULEZ wasn't best way to improve air, so is it all just a cash grab? I mean, have you been surprised by the tone of the coverage?
Yeah. Look, can I just? We've discussed this before, but can I just be clear to those who are listening to this exchange for the first time around ULEZ? The decision to expand the ULEZ so it covers all of London was a difficult decision for me to take. Arguably one of the most difficult decisions I've taken as mayor for the last 7 years, but it was a vital one for me to take, because I see the consequences of air pollution in our great city. But also we know the ULEZ is effective. How do we know that? Because in central London, when we introduced the ULEZ, we saw a reduction of almost 50% of the toxicity in our air. You know what? There are a third fewer children being admitted to hospital with asthma-related illnesses caused by air pollution. We expanded it to in London and saw a further improvement of 20% in our air. But in outer London is where the worst air is. The 10 boroughs with the largest number of premature deaths are in outer London. If you saw the 30 GPs with the largest number of respiratory problems, 24 of those are in outer London. So look, it was a difficult decision for me to take, but I've been listening all the time, which is why without a penny of support from the government, I've been providing additional support to Londoners. And I'll continue to listen, but we can't afford to delay this, not because of pounds and pence, but because of the numbers of premature deaths and ill health caused by air pollution.
I mean, you're right. I have heard you say that before, but you didn't answer my question about the ugliness of the coverage and the tone.
No, I have been surprised. No, let me answer directly. Apologies for not answering your question directly. Yeah, listen, I didn't expect for there to be, people linking my policies to clean up the air with conspiracy theories. I did expect people to have genuine concerns, and I've been listening to those genuine concerns. I didn't expect, this to be weaponized by others who you and I have exchanged with, who didn't believe COVID was real, believed in conspiracy theorists, and so forth. So the challenge I have is to listen to, and I will always listen to Londoners. I will always try and address genuine concerns Londoners have, but I have been surprised how they've been latched onto by others.
Let's crack on. Thank you, Lance. Another call, please.
Thanks, Lance. The next caller is from South London, and it's Lorraine. Good morning, Lorraine.
Good morning. I'd just like to ask why it is that all blue badges are not exempt from the ultra-low admission.
No, blue badges are exempt. What happened, Lorraine, was because each borough has a different criteria for issuing blue badges, we worked with the DWP on the criteria, the Department for Work and Pensions, on the criteria they have. But the good news is because of the further announcement I made on the 1st of August, every single Londoner, forget whether you've got a blue badge or not, every single Londoner is eligible for support. But if you are disabled, you're entitled to exemptions and grace periods. And so that means that the ULEZ doesn't apply if your vehicle is, adapted for those who are disabled. So the ULEZ doesn't apply for certain disabled people from next Tuesday. But there are exemptions period, there are grace periods, but also if you're somebody who uses the NHS regularly, there's also an NHS reimbursement scheme as well.
What's your precise situation, Lorraine?
Please, right, my situation is this, I have a disabled child. He has hidden disabilities. We have a blue badge for him because obviously he cannot use public transport and he cannot be too far from the car for safety reasons. Now, I've tried to get the exemption, but because my child doesn't get the high rate mobility side of DLA, we're not entitled to it. And then when I phoned TfL the other day, because I'm devastated, because it's like, what does this mean for my family? We're not going to be able to go nowhere. We're going to have no quality of life. I cannot afford to pay the ULEZ every day. Yeah. And I was told basically it's tough. My child ain't disabled enough. So I'm just curious because it's not easy to get a blue badge. They don't just award them to people, because if it was that easy, everyone would have one. So I'm wondering why it is people that get disability allowance for their child but have the low rate mobility don't get exemption. That's discriminating. I find that you're picking on us. It's not fair.
Well, Lorraine, I don't have exchange on air, but let me take your phone number. And I promise you, this morning, my team will ring you up to see why you've been told you can't get help, because you should be getting help. So if you
as you understand it, every vehicle with a blue badge should be exempt from paying.
So if I explain, the number of people who have a blue badge is actually less than the number of people who receive financial support from the Department of Work and Pensions. So if we'd said everybody with a blue badge gets support, that's a smaller number than those who get support from DWP. But notwithstanding that, because of my announcement on August the 1st, every single person in London with a non-compliant car and non-compliant motorbike gets support. So I think what Lorraine is talking about is the exemptions, because some people will get a longer period. So what I'd like to do, James, with Lorraine's permission, is for her to give your team her phone number, not on air, and I'll get somebody from my office to ring up Lorraine this morning to see what we can do to support Lorraine, because nobody, not me or anybody, wants Lorraine to be held captive in a home.
Okay, and then Lorraine, we will then get back in touch with you and find out what's happened.
What are we going to do?
Well, we'll find out.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, that's lovely. Thank you very much.
Lorraine, thanks for ringing in. Lorraine, thanks for ringing in. I really appreciate that.
We'll follow that up as well. Back to the switchboard.
Lorraine, thanks for that call. Genuinely, and it's distressing for you. And I'm really hoping we can address your concerns. I'm sure we can. And that's what we've been doing throughout this process since I first embarked on this journey in 2017, listening and addressing people's genuine concerns. The next call is from Leeds, and it's Harry. Good morning, Harry.
Morning, Sadiq. How are you?
I'm all right. You okay?
Good. Yeah, hopefully it'll be better if you can help me out a bit here. So I'm a prospective UCL master's student starting in September. And so I'm currently living in Leeds. And for the last 2 months, I've been trying to find accommodation in London. And I've made multiple visits down, spent hundreds of pounds in travel, only to get down there and find that the letting agents have they've sold the room, or the room's already been let. So, every time I'm coming down, I'm being misled by letting agents and landlords. On previous occasions, I've been down and the letting agents haven't even turned up for the viewings. I've got a budget of around £800, which is already expensive compared to previous accommodation where I've lived up north. And so the £800, when I get down there, it turns out that the letting agents and landlords are then starting effectively a bidding war. So the rooms that were valued at £800 on platforms like spareroom.com, Rightmove, have then been the bids go up to about 1,100 quid.
Good grief!
Which is beyond affordable for myself. My family are having to sacrifice quite a bit to help me out, move down there anyway. And obviously, London should be attracting bright people and not necessarily rich people. So my question to you is, what are you going to be doing to help students who do not live in London find affordable accommodation?
Well, Harry, firstly, congratulations. It's not easy starting a master's at UCL, so congratulations on that. I'm afraid the bad news is, your story is one I hear too often in London. Look, let me be frank, I've said this in 2016. We have a housing crisis in London. It's been decades in the making. We are seeking to, your question was, what am I doing to address the housing crisis, this situation where there are bidding wars, auctions taking place. The average rent in London for a home, Harry, is £2,700 a month. So since I've become mayor, we've started to build and completed record numbers of council homes, but also genuine affordable homes. And we require now, Harry, for halls of residence, for there to be a certain percentage that are affordable for their students, undergraduates and postgraduates as well. And so that's really important for people like you. One of the things that I'm lobbying the government to do is to introduce in London what they've managed to do in Scotland, which is a rent freeze. So what you're the victim of is letting agents raising hugely the rents that tenants pay, which leads to the bidding wars you're talking about. There's nothing that prevents them from doing so. In Scotland, what the Scottish government did after lobbying was first for 6 months bring in a rent freeze. They couldn't do that. And for the next 6 months, rents could only go up by 3%. So far, the government has said no. But the government have listened in previous campaigns we have to avoid, for example, paying a letting agent's fee and so forth. But at the core of this, Harry, is we've got to build far more genuinely affordable homes in London, increase the supply.
It's nothing specific to students. You can't put the frighteners on UCL and insist that they do more to provide accommodation for people like that. To give UCL credit,
UCL and many other universities in London are building student accommodation, and they're working with us to make sure the student accommodation is affordable. But UCL and other universities in London have more students than there is halls of residence. And that's been the issue in London, because we've got more universities in London than any city in the world. And Harry, the other thing you will know is many of our students in London now aren't leaving London because they stay at home. So they're not even going to halls of residence, and they're going to the university nearest to them. You're fortunate you get to experience another city, but my worry is you're being priced out.
And the reason why it's concerned, Harry, commute from Leeds. Harry,
right.
Is there any prospect of you not being able to take up your place if this situation doesn't improve shortly?
Well, I do have family friends that live probably an hour and a half, 2 hours out of London.
Right.
Living in Leeds, it's a 3-hour journey down, obviously. But
yeah.
I'd have to shack up with some family friends, just outside of London. And the problem is the letting agents and landlords are expecting people to do viewings on the day.
Yeah.
And so you get in touch with them and say, I want to arrange, a few viewings for tomorrow because I've got a bit of spare time. So you go on all the platforms, you start messaging people, and then they say, okay, well, we're doing viewings today at 3:00, and it's like, well, I can't get down to London for that. And then my experience told me now that the rooms have gone. So,
Harry, it's even worse than that, Harry. So, some landlords and some letting agents are asking for a year's rent at the beginning. And if you can't provide a year's rent, on day one, they're not giving you the property and stuff. And it's causing real heartache to not just students, undergraduates, postgraduates, but to families as well. And that's why I say, in the medium to long term, we've got to be building far more genuinely affordable homes, student accommodation. In the short term, though, there is something the government can do really, really easily, which is to freeze the rents and not have a situation where letting agents can do what they're doing to people like you. And those viewings, the 1 hour viewings, what happens is, Harry, you'll know this, dozens of people turn up during that 1 hour window, and he or she who bids the highest gets the accommodation even above the asking price. That's why it's so difficult.
And also, I know you know this, Harry, but if you are shacking up with family friends, then you will be in town once you've started or once you've moved to London to get to those viewings quicker on the day. So hopefully it won't be a permanent arrangement. But that's just me trying to be helpful. It's not got anything to do with the politics of the situation or the urgency of the scenario you find yourself in. 23 minutes after 10. Staying with matters educational, London students have, we've learned this morning, performed best in England in GCSEs. Why is that, do you think?
Well, about 20 years ago, there's something called the London Challenge, which was introduced, which is basically giving schools in London who'd been performing badly in previous decades, and it was the Labour government that did that, additional monies because of the inequalities in London. That's fantastic. But frankly, the reason why the children are doing so well is because of their hard work, their teachers' hard work, the families' hard work. And I congratulate every single child who's done well. Can I make this one point, though? There are some children who may be listening with mum and dad and carer who may not have done as well. Don't be despondent, don't be gloomy, don't be depressed. You always get a second chance. And so I know rightly there'll be some really proud parents, really proud children, really proud teachers. But I always think we should spare a thought for those who may be disappointed today. And also make this point, which is, you and I both have talked about this generation being the COVID generation, how difficult it's been for the last 2, 3, 4 years. And so, congratulations to all of who have done well. It's because of your hard work, your teachers' hard work, and your family's hard work. And if you haven't done so well, honestly, speak to your school careers department. There are other things available for you to do if you can't do retakes next year.
How did you do in yours?
I did all right. So I'm of the generation who did O-levels, if you remember.
Yeah, no, I was too.
So I did okay in my O-levels and my A-levels, but I don't think, if I'm honest, there was a pressure from my parents in the sense there is, the social media and so forth there is now. So nowadays, there is so much pressure on your kids to do well. It's talked about in the media. There's a social media presence. There's, what your mates did and so forth. But the key thing is not to give up. One of my brothers didn't want to do studies, so he got an apprenticeship, and he's arguably the most successful member of the Khan family, a motor mechanic. And so there's not a one size fits all in relation to this.
Okay, back to the phones.
The next caller is from South London, and it's in Brixton, and it's Charlie. Hi, Charlie.
Hi. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure.
I saw this week that the Tory mayoral candidate made some, in my opinion, pretty disgusting comments about Notting Hill Carnival. And claiming that the black community had a problem with crime. Diversity is one of our biggest strengths, and Notting Hill in particular, which I normally go to, is a great example of that. So for a mayoral candidate to say something like that has really shocked me.
This is Susan Hall, Charlie, who said that the Notting Hill Carnival was dangerous and that there were problems with crime in the black community. And it should be moved, I think, is perhaps the crucial point. David Lammy has... go on, what's the question?
So my question was, especially times like this, we should be celebrating and embracing London's diversity rather than causing division. So my question is, twofold, I guess. One, do you agree with her comments? And two, if you don't, then should those types of comments rule someone like Susan Hall out of, leading a city like ours, which is extremely diverse?
Well, Charlie, thanks for your question. Look, I spent last night at an event in City Hall where we remembered, reflected and honoured people who were, the honouring was those involved in the abolition. The remembering and reflecting was those responsible for the transatlantic slave trade. And I'm afraid, Charlie, we're still seeing some of the consequences of one of the worst crimes against humanity ever perpetrated, if not the worst. And actually, there are institutional systemic issues in our city and our country. There is structural racism. I've talked about that previously.
Are you accusing Susan Hall of that?
No. What I'm saying is, these issues should be discussed in a nuanced, sensible way. And I worry when politicians and leaders talk in sound bites to try and get a round of applause or to appeal to a certain audience. I'm also worried, and I said this last night in my comments, about crude culture wars. That's what I was leading to, Charlie. And I worry, and I'm somebody who feels like I'm a pawn in these crude culture wars often, as some of the language politicians use. It's for my Tory opponent to explain her comments. But I'll tell you this, Charlie, I, like you, will be at Carnival this weekend. It's worth reminding people of our history. So the Carnival began in 1959 after race riots, where the black community in that part of London there were slums, and the black community were put in those slums in Notting Hill, decided to organise a festival with calypso music, reggae and so forth to celebrate, black culture. In 1966, the first carnival began as it currently is, and I think it's a wonderful occasion over those 2-3 days where hundreds of thousands of people come together, whether it's the floats, whether it's the steel bands, whether it's the calypso, whether it's the reggae, celebrating our diversity, which, like you, I believe is a strength, not a weakness. The reason why I mentioned slavery, James, was because I think the causes of crime are complex, but actually the causes of crime are to do with deprivation, poverty, lack of opportunities. And those are some of the legacies of the transatlantic slave trade. And, there are some people who made huge benefits from the slave trade. Go to the City of London, the Square Mile, you see some of the benefits of the slave trade. But there are lots of people, and I'm talking about those Londoners from African Caribbean descent, who suffered the consequences adversely. And that's what I meant in relation to structural racism. But Charlie, listen, it's for Londoners when it comes to the election on May the 2nd to choose whether they want to have a candidate who wants to be the mayor for all Londoners or a candidate who talks in those terms.
We did discuss some of those issues on yesterday's programme. If you missed it, it is, of course, available from Global Player. Charlie, thank you. Another call, please, Mr. Mayor.
Hi, the next caller is from Twickenham, and it's Anne. Good morning, Anne.
Good morning.
Hiya.
Okay. Yeah, hi. My question, obviously I sympathise with the previous, I don't know whether it's previous caller, but, people trying to find accommodation. And it's even worse when people are coming down from the north, because we have been looking for our friends. The guy who said that when he came down, he couldn't, when he got there, either the person didn't turn up or whatever. What we have done for our friend is we actually say, tell us where it is, and we'll go and view it for you, and then using our mobile phone so that he can actually see the property itself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Visit the estate agent on his behalf.
Can I just push you to the question, Anne, if I may?
Okay. Sorry.
That's
the question is, why are you... I see so many empty offices around Twickenham area. Why are you not converting it into residential accommodation?
Thanks for your question, and I'm sure the caller you referred to, who's going to start his Masters in Harry, will listen to your ideas about other people doing viewings for him. So look, the short answer is it's possible to adapt an office to a home. The planning permission isn't prevented, and the London plan doesn't prevent people from doing so. So if the owner of that office wanted to convert the office to housing, they could do it. But, and here's the but, it's got to be of good quality and decent accommodation. So some buildings built for office are adaptable, can be used for residential. Some aren't fit for purpose. And so depending on who the owner of those offices is, Anne, if it's empty because they can't get a tenant in there, they may decide to convert it to residential. It'd be for your local council to decide whether they can do so. The government have made it easier, by the way, for people who have offices to convert them to homes. And so, again, the owner of that office could do so. I can't, as the mayor, compulsory purchase those offices and turn them to residential accommodation, nor can I, by the way, compulsory purchase properties in London that are left empty that are homes bought by overseas investors using our homes as gold bricks. But I think your point is a point well made about actually if there are parts of London where it simply is not possible to make them economically feasible, we should look at residential. But what we can't do is make sure that in those parts of London where we do need industrial workspaces, offices and shops for those to be converted, because once they're converted they can't convert back. It's very difficult.
Thank you, Anne. We've got time for a couple more, I think.
Great. The next caller is from Southwark, and I hope I pronounced your name right. It's Canayo. Is that right, Canayo?
Yes, it is right. It's Canayo. Thank you very much, James.
My pleasure.
And good morning, Mr. Khan. Thank you so much for taking my call. So I'm a teacher. I teach psychology and sociology, and I'm super proud of my students receiving their GCSE results today and those who received their A-levels last week. But one thing that's come up in my classroom conversations from 15, 16-year-olds is the cost of living crisis. And it's amazing that these students are aware of the economy. And I'm concerned about the opportunities that, may lie ahead for them in London. How can we ensure that our young people, will succeed in this vibrant city?
Well, can I just say, I began when James asked me about GCSEs by applauding teachers as well. I mean, my sister's a teacher, as is a sister-in-law, and teachers changed my life for the better. So thank you for the work you do with your children. I'm sure inspiring them to do better. But you're right, reminding me as the mayor of some of the adverse consequences of the cost of living crisis. I listened to the exchange between James O'Brien and Keir Starmer earlier on this week, where Keir talked about his concerns going to university today or last week, I beg your pardon, on A-level results day. And that's what I think you're alluding to as well and articulating. So I think one of the things that people like me should be doing, and I am doing, and I like to give you examples of this, and the government should be doing, is helping people during this cost of living crisis, not exacerbating some of the cost of living issues there are. So what I'm doing, in London to help with the cost of living crisis that directly affects your students is when the government's telling me I should be removing free travel for children, I refuse to do so. It's really important to allow children to visit parts of our city they otherwise couldn't do. It's also really important to give young people aspiration and hope. And that's why the adult education budget I'm using to give free courses for young people, free courses for those who earn the minimum wage to get more skills for a better job. But also making sure that we celebrate all the various opportunities there are in our city, but ensuring those opportunities are available to Londoners, whether it's in the green economy, financial services, legal services, construction, and so forth. And one of the things I worry about is many of your students who may have got a place to go to university outside of London, may choose not to do so because they can't afford to live in halls of residence or in private accommodation, and will stay at home and go to university near them. Nothing wrong with that, but that choice has been made because of cost of living rather than because that's the university they want to go to. But we are trying to address the cost of living crisis on a number of policies we're doing, and on our website in City Hall you can go to the cost of living hub. But it is a concern that I've got, and I think the problem it's having on young people is it's stifling their aspiration, which is a big concern. Have some of your students expressed concern about their options, Kanaya?
Yeah, thank you so much for all that you're doing, because those opportunities are absolutely invaluable to our young people. So we're grateful for your support.
Congratulations to you and to your students. It's 10:35, Sadiq Khan with me for a few more minutes. Can I refer you to the Daily Telegraph's report, if I may, that your Deputy Mayor, Shirley Rodriguez, had been putting pressure on experts, on scientists, after they published research showing that perhaps ULEZ was not going to have the effect on air quality that you and your colleagues have long insisted it would and does.
Yeah, can I just deal with this? I saw the reports in the media in relation to some exchanges the Deputy Mayor had with leading experts from Imperial College. And the way it's been reported is taken out of context the exchange between the Deputy Mayor and leading scientist. I think it's right and proper, by the way, that politicians engage with scientists. There is no scientist that I've met who cowers to pressure from anybody else. These are world-renowned experts. I think the issue is there is a conflation of a number of different issues: the ultra-low emission zone, the work done by the Air Quality Department at Imperial College, the work done by the Engineering Department at Imperial College, a separate piece of work done in relation to what you and I discussed 20 minutes ago, policy introduced by Boris Johnson, the low emission zone. What is quite clear and unarguable, and even the government accepts this, and their own experts, is air pollution is not safe at any levels, and it leads to all sorts of adverse health consequences. Simple as that.
Well, it's not, is it? Because the research published in 2021 showed that the introduction of ULEZ in 2019 cut nitrogen dioxide levels by less than 3% and had insignificant effects on ozone and particulate matter, which prompted Shirley Rodriguez, one of your deputy mayors for Environment and Energy, to tell Professor Frank Kelly at Imperial that she was really disappointed that Imperial College had publicised these findings.
There are two separate pieces of work done by Imperial College. There's one piece of work done by the Engineering Department you referred to, which assessed the air quality on the day ULEZ went live in 2019 to 2 months later. There's a separate piece of work done by Imperial College by the world-renowned Air Quality Department, which looked at the improvement in air quality from the day I announced the policy, because obviously in the lead up to the go live date, people change their vehicles. We've heard that today during Speak to Sadiq. And he then looked at the air quality some months later on, because it takes some time for the cumulative benefits to be seen. And the point I think Shirley Rodriguez was making to the Air Quality Department at Imperial College is people may conflate the work done by the world-renowned Air Quality Department of Imperial College with the work done by the Engineering Department, one person, over a 2-month period. That's the exchange in the emails between Shirley Rodriguez and Frank Kelly. And by the way, Frank Kelly can speak for himself. He's not resiled from the view that many held Queen Mary King's College, Imperial College, World Health Organization, Chief Medical Officer of the UK, that the ultra-low emission zone works and has been effective in central London and inner London. And that's one of the reasons why I want to expand it to outer London, because I think this is a right, not a privilege.
At what point are you expecting to be able to turn around and say it succeeded, or to concede that it has failed?
I think what happens from the central London and inner London experiences, roughly speaking, a month or so after the go live date, we can tell how many vehicles are compliant or non-compliant. And then 6 months afterwards, there's a piece of preliminary work being done, which is preliminary work being done about some of the results of particulate matter and nitrogen dioxide. And it's a year after the go live date, you can see any benefits or disbenefits. That was our experience with 2017, 2019 and 2021. I don't see any reason why that should be different. So the short answer is about 6 weeks after go live, I'll be able to tell you how many vehicles are compliant, not compliant. 6-7 months afterwards, raw data. 12 to 30 months afterwards, we can say how successful it's been or if it's not been successful.
And I suppose there's no way of counting the people whose lives and livelihoods, and we've heard from a few over the last few months on Speak to Sadiq, whose lives and livelihoods are going to be severely compromised. There's no...
Yeah, can I address those people head on? Yeah, no, sure. I just say this, look, we had similar concerns in relation to, window cleaners in outer London not being able to do gigs in central London. Musicians, when I brought in the central London ULEZ, musicians who live in outer London not being able to go into central London. I was told central London would become a ghost town because of the central London ultra-low emission zone. The good news is that didn't happen, but air quality improved. In inner London, I was told similar things. You'll remember that at the last mayoral election in 2021, my Tory opponent then campaigned against the expansion of the ULEZ to inner London, South Circular and North Circular. Again, we were told those in outer London and outside of London would no longer go to inner London and central London because of the expansion. And so all I'd say to reassure people who've got, by the way, James, I accept they've got genuine concerns. I'm not in any way saying Lance's call wasn't genuine and he's not genuinely concerned. I accept people are. All I'd say is the evidence is actually most vehicles are compliant. We've gone from 44% of vehicles being compliant in 2017 to cars being compliant, to 97% cars in inner London, 9 out of 10 in outer London. And so more than likely you're compliant and won't be affected, although you see the benefits. And if you aren't compliant and you live in London, there is now support available for every single person affected.
10:41 is the time. Final question. Dawn Butler is my guest on Full Disclosure this week, and announced her ambition to become Mayor of London one day. When do you think that there might be the need for a different Labour candidate? Well,
I've got declaring interest, which is Dawn's one of my best friends, and we don't normally fall out. But if she comes for me in the next 6 months, we'll have words and stuff. But look, I'm quite clear in relation to why I ran to be mayor. It's the London promise that's important to me, which is my ability, as long as I can, to be the helping hand that allows Londoners who work hard to fulfil their potential. I'm thoroughly enjoying this job. I'm thoroughly enjoying giving back to the city that gave so much to me and my family. Looking forward to the campaign when it begins in earnest against my Tory opponent, Susan Hall. And looking forward to serving, the next term, and let's wait and see.
Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, many thanks indeed. Speak to Sadiq will no doubt return next month. 10:42 is the time. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I'm tempted next to move from London politics to Scottish politics. 10:46 is the time, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Okay, I do enjoy. I don't know why I enjoy these conversations. Normally, when I find myself under attack from all sides, I find my enthusiasm for the conversation diminishes somewhat. I get quite fatigued by it. But I care so much about Scottish politics, and so much more than I did when I started in this job. Of all the areas of UK politics, I suppose with the possible exception of Northern Ireland, the biggest crash course I've been on in this chair has been on these issues. And one of the biggest learning curves, one of the steepest learning curves I've climbed would be what I do consider to be a really deep and entrenched bias in London media against independence in general and the SNP in particular. I forget precisely what the story was that prompted our last dive into this territory, but it was breathtakingly sort of skewed. So much so that any last vestiges of scepticism I had about the claim of constant bias disappeared. So I want to preface anything that happens next by saying that the Daily Telegraph's coverage of this poll is biased. But Sir John Curtis, the doyen of British psephologists, is most definitely not. So, for example, writing a headline about the end of the SNP being nigh on the back of one poll is biased. It's not unique to the SNP. Any party that's not the Tories will get similar treatment from most British newspapers, but it is in some sense silly to read so much into one poll, but it is equally silly to read nothing into polls in general, because they are generally suggesting the probable direction of traffic. So the full headline today, end of the SNP era is in sight as Labour fortunes turn in Scotland. And I mean, some of these numbers are concerning, but I want to look at them through the lens of Sir John Curtis's expertise. He's the guy who, if you're not familiar with the name, he's the guy whose exit polls, for example, are about as accurate can be. That's why, the BBC can announce an election result before the votes have been counted, as a consequence of the quality of the research that John Curtis and his colleagues undertake. The survey shows that Labour would win 24 seats north of the border next year, which is exactly the same as what the Scottish National Party is projected to achieve. And that represents a huge turnaround, a huge change in the context of Scottish politics. And here we come to the question. So John Curtis said nearly every constituency in Scotland was now marginal. And Humza Yousaf's low popularity ratings deserve comparison with Liz Truss. Now, for many people listening to this programme, that will come as a bit of a shock, because we don't pay as much attention to these matters as perhaps we could or should. But you're looking at about 35% support in this poll, which is higher than it's been since 2014 and puts them within 2 points of the SNP. That means the SNP would lose about half of its 48 seats achieved in the 2019 election. And crucially, according to Sir John Curtis, it means that if Labour does pick up this number of seats in Scotland, you can probably knock 4 points off the lead over the Conservatives that Labour would need in terms of a UK-wide overall majority. So there's quite a lot to get stuck into here. There's quite a lot to examine, and I want to try to do it. The challenge I always face when we turn our attention to Scottish politics is engaging Scottish people in Scotland rather, but also keeping it interesting for people like me who are not in Scotland. When I talk about getting it in the neck from both sides, I still get a bit of jip on social media for saying that I as a British person with a deep and abiding love of Scotland, I found the prospect of independence to be saddening, because it would mean that I was no longer a citizen of a country of which Scotland was a part. And hand on heart, I thought that was utterly uncontroversial. It shows what I know. I thought that was a perfectly reasonable thing to say, but I now have to caveat it for the hard of thinking with the line that if I was Scottish, then that would not be a factor in my thinking. And oddly, I think I would probably, because I'm quite excitable, I would probably have gone more towards independence after Westminster was essentially captured by the most incompetent and corrupt set of charlatans in living memory. And of course, my country, Scotland, was essentially dragged out of the European Union against the express wishes of a majority of Scottish people. I have been surprised that momentum we detected in the early days has not been sustained. I mean, genuinely surprised. But that, again, will be a consequence of not concentrating as hard on Scottish politics and Scottish matters as we do on the broader question of British politics. And, yeah, look, I'm conscious of perhaps sometimes focusing a little bit too hard on Westminster, on English politics. But that's the big surprise for me about these numbers, is that the notion of detaching Scotland from the rest of the United Kingdom is diminishing. But then again, does diminishing support for the SNP actually mean diminishing support for the notion of independence? I genuinely don't know. what I do know is this. Telegraph reports that the era of SNP dominance in Scotland appears to be over after a poll showed Labour is on course to win the same number of seats in a general election following a dramatic shift in support. The reason I accuse the Telegraph of bias is because a single poll that painted a very ugly picture for the Tory party would simply not be portrayed in such apocalyptic terms. So don't waste tenpence calling me to point that out. I'm absolutely crystal clear about that and fully conscious that it's part of a long and ugly tradition of London-based media. But what I do know is that this is pretty ugly, and when you are led by a politician whose personal popularity ratings stand comparison with those of Liz Truss when she became Prime Minister, then you've got a bit of a problem going on. And I just want to know what that problem is. I want to know what's happening. That's all. 0345 6060 973. And because this involves significant numbers of people moving their loyalties, because this involves significant numbers of people changing their mind, and you know by now that the only political conversations as I approach decrepitude, the political conversations I find most interesting are not the ones that we used to have where people with gammon between their ears would ring in and I'd hit them over their head with an inflatable hammer and it'd all go viral and everyone was happy and yada yada. But the conversations I enjoy the most now are with people who have or are capable of changing their minds. And this is, in the context of British politics, this is the most fertile ground available at the moment for people who are or have changed their minds. 10:53 is the time. So what's going on? Why is the SNP struggling so much? I know some of the obvious answers to that question, but I will accept all of them. And how do individuals who are essentially of the left account for this shift in loyalty from the SNP to the Labour Party? It's a very broad question, so don't hold back. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. As one poll suggests that Labour and the SNP are now neck and neck in Scotland, I want you to tell me two things. I want you to tell me why you think that is happening, 0345 6060 973, and I want you to tell me what it means for you as either a Scottish independence supporter or a Scot. Okay? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. And remember, these are issues on which I need a little bit more help than usual, and that's just the nature of the beast. I don't know as much about Scottish politics as I do, for example, when I've got the Mayor of London on the opposite side of the desk taking your calls. 0345 6060 973. Do I need to apologise to everybody today who's in neither London nor Scotland? Well, I've got some wonderful news for you. Mystery Hour is coming up at 12, which is arguably the most democratic, certainly the most equal opportunity hour that we spend together on the radio every week. So I mean, I find the lens through which I examine Scottish politics historically has always been independence. But if backing for independence is remaining at about 48%, while support for the SNP is diminishing, then I've got a problem. I've got a problem of comprehension. I've got a problem of understanding the thinking and the motivation of an independence supporter who is now removing their vote or likely to remove their vote from the party most likely to deliver independence. Because, I mean, a vote for Labour in Scotland postpones the possibility of independence for presumably for another generation, at least for the foreseeable future. So is that just a simple question of prioritisation? Getting the Tories out is even more important to you than getting Scotland out of the Union. That seems to me to be the only available explanation, but I need to hear it from you for it to carry any weight. 10:56 is the time. Sir John Curtis goes on. The SNP has had little success so far in shaking Labour off its tail. As a result, the party faces a continuing risk of losing a significant number of Westminster seats in next year's UK general election. I clarify again, it's only one poll, but it's of a piece with the general direction of traffic, and it suggests that the SNP's era of domination in Scottish politics could be coming to an end. Sir John Curtis goes on. The party's efforts are seemingly not being helped by Humza Yousaf's apparent difficulty in making a favourable impression on the Scottish public. He's down to a minus 22 net approval rating. That's the difference between the number of people who like and dislike him. So he's only slightly more popular than the Scottish Tory leader, Douglas Ross, and far behind Anas Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader, who is, still in negative territory, but he's on minus 3 as opposed to minus 22 for the leader of the SNP. So, there's a bit of what's going on here on the national level, but also when we have these conversations, most interestingly for me, on the personal level, the idea that you are moving your support not away from a hope for independence, but back to Keir Starmer's Labour Party. How much of it is down to Keir Starmer? Again, you want to talk about newspaper bias. I almost added there, probably not much, judging by most of the coverage he's getting. But of course, that's coverage in newspapers that are dominated ridiculously by anti-Labour sentiment and anti-Labour commentators. So maybe Sir Keir Starmer is cutting through in Scotland. If you see it as a straight choice, as a battle of personality, a beauty contest, if you prefer, between Humza Yousaf and Keir Starmer, maybe that's informing your decision. But again, it means that you're putting independence into second place when it comes to what your priorities are and what your political proclivities are pointing towards. You can email, you can text, you can tweet, you can do all of those things. I won't take a call until after the news because we're pretty much up against it. But you don't have to be in Scotland to contribute to this, but you do have to have a slightly better grasp of the facts of Scottish politics at the moment than I have myself. 0345 6060 973. The Tories, incidentally, would hold 6 Scottish seats, which is the same as in 2019. One day, probably not today, but one day we probably should do a phone-in on why Scotland's relationship with the Conservative Party has been so detached, so estranged for so long. We talk about media. I know you get Scottish editions, but essentially we are watching the same televisions and listening to the same radios and reading the same newspapers, and yet the Conservative Party can't get arrested, hasn't been able to get arrested in Scotland for generations. And I don't know why. It'd be interesting to pin that down. It can't just be down to the appalling state of the current generation of leaders. It must run much, much deeper. And now you find yourself essentially making a choice between two parties that are, under current and previous leadership, they are of the left. The SNP is a left-wing party, and so is the Labour Party. And yet they are the two horses likely to slug it out for superiority in next year's election. 3 minutes after 11 is the time. Changing minds in Scottish politics. Give me a call if you've got one and talk me through why your mind is changing. I could have just done that as the introduction, I don't need to do these 15, 20-minute round the houses. So that sounds nice as well. It's got a nice ring to it. Changing minds in Scottish politics. Sounds like a research paper. Changing minds in Scottish politics. Have you got one? And why is it changing? 0345 6060 973. Ross is in Edinburgh. Ross, what have you got?
Hi, James. I'm a long-time listener, but a first-time caller.
Welcome
so
aboard.
Thank you. Calling from Edinburgh, as you say. I'm kind of an unusual one amongst my circles. I think, touching on what you were saying, a lot of my friends at the time we left the EU went from being against Scottish independence toward for it. But I'm actually the opposite. I've changed my mind mostly from pro-independence to somewhere between undecided and voting the opposite direction if we were to have another referendum now.
Oh, okay. Well, what about general elections? Because what was as an Englishman, one of the things that intrigues me is how I think lazily I presumed that the support for the SNP and support for independence would be joined at the hip, but they're not, are they?
I wouldn't say so, no. I'd say a lot of my friends are leaning toward pro-independence now, whereas a lot of them have moved away from supporting the SNP, especially since change of leadership.
That's interesting. How does that work?
I think, certainly in my case as well, the support for the SNP was broadly toward individuals. So we're thinking Nicola Sturgeon, then Deputy First Minister John Swinney as well.
Yes.
They were seen as the most competent options to many people, I suspect. I'm sure, of course, others will disagree. But it was the compelling case of who would be best to lead us as a devolved nation. And the answer was quite often Nicola Sturgeon and my friends and I's views. But now that she's departed and Humza's taken over, Humza, I think, is still a good leader, but comparatively with less experience, it doesn't feel quite as compelling a case.
That's really interesting. You've single-handedly justified this topic, actually. I hadn't thought of that. So, it's a bit lazy south of the border thinking. You forget that a vote for independence entails putting whoever is the leader of the majority party into a much, much, much more powerful position than First Minister. And therefore the calibre of candidate for that role. I mean, that's amazing. I missed that point completely. And in fact, quite a few texts coming in talking about that from the other side of the road, and suggesting, here you go, as a previous Conservative supporter in Aberdeen, I think the key reason for this movement is Keir Starmer being supportable by a majority compared to Corbyn. And remember, this is a Conservative supporter, I would happily vote Labour if it means we get the SNP out, but I wouldn't have done that under Corbyn. A lot of people are more anti-SNP than pro-Conservative or Labour. That's not you, obviously, but on the independence movement, what that's different then from the SNP movement. You're cooling towards independence in general. Why is that?
My aversion toward independence in general.
Yeah, well, you're just cooling towards it, having been in favour before.
Yeah, I think for me it's predominantly the Brexit chapter, in that for me the UK is our biggest trading partner, the rest of the UK, that is. Yeah. And in my mind, now that there's not a wider union or a wider market to work within, I'm struggling to see a compelling economic case for breaking away right now. So there's a lot of talk about saying let's rejoin the EU once we've left the UK, but then we're still losing out on our largest trading partner, and the calculations just don't really add up in my mind. So it's a very different world we're working with.
It's a negative of Brexit, like a photographic negative. It's really odd, because these are Brexiter arguments that are being turned on their head. The notion that, or rather Remainer arguments that are being turned on their head. We must keep the status quo rather than striking out into sort of this brave new world. So Brexit makes people warier of independence, even though people in Scotland wanted to stay in the European Union. I'm explaining it very clumsily. It's support for one union has actually been increased by departure from the other. 7 after 11 is the time. 0345 606 0973 is the number. Thank you, Ross. I hadn't thought of that, and quite a lot coming in on the Keir Starmer line. Let me deal with some of the disappointment that I like to cause every day. Stephen in Glasgow is disappointed hearing you peddle the Labour line that they need to win Scotland to get the Tories out. I don't know why, Stephen, this happens whenever I discuss Scottish politics, but you're hearing voices in your head, mate. You're hearing things I never said. I told you what Sir John Curtis, widely regarded as the finest psephologist in the country, had to say about how this poll, if it was enacted in Parliament, would impact upon what Labour needed to do in the rest of the country. But I haven't quoted Labour or a Labour politician since I came on air, or since we started this topic at 11:15. So, it's not Idiot's Corner territory, obviously, but it is wrong. David is in Edinburgh, also in Edinburgh. David, what would you like to say?
Hello, yes. Well, I can't agree with your last caller.
Good.
Support for independence has gone up. It is certainly true that the SNP support for the SNP is going down.
Yes.
That is the legacy of Nicola Sturgeon. She was good at doing TV presentations, but I think there was no real substance. I disagree. I think.
Well, hang on a minute. That's a bit counterintuitive. If support for the SNP is going down since she left, then that's not really a platform from which one leaps to criticism of her. One leaps to a retrospective appreciation. I mean, you might not have liked her, but if you support something and then the leader leaves and support goes down, that means the leader was very effective at more than television presentations.
Well, I would disagree with you on that, because I think.
So how does the party diminishing popularity after Nicola Sturgeon leaves suggest that she was not a good and effective and more popular leader?
Well, I think she was a holding pattern. So she did not increase, for instance, support for the SNP. That was all done under the previous.
Yes, but it's gone down since she left. So how does that paint her in a negative light? If something goes down after someone leaves, how does that render them the problem?
Well, I used to be in the SNP. I'm not any longer. And the damage and rot set in before she officially announced her resignation. And that only happened after the police investigation.
But I was going with your analysis, which was that it went down after she left, and that was because she wasn't very good, and that just doesn't make any sense.
The trend started before she left. The damage in the party started several years ago. Membership was being lost over a long period of time. I will give her one thing. She was very good at communicating, very good with the press and the media and on television. She was very good.
It's the single most important weapon in a politician's arsenal in the 21st century.
Unfortunately, that might be true. But of course, that only takes you so far, and eventually the public begin to wake up. Now, the reason why independence is now higher...
It's about the same. It's holding steady at 48, I think, across the polls of polls.
Yeah, I've seen some polls higher than that.
Yes, and some lower. That's why I say it's holding steady across the polls of polls.
But that's telling. As you said, you thought it would be locked hand in hand. One of the reasons why people no longer need to support the SNP is because Alex Salmond set up his own party, which is doing increasingly better in the polls. It's yet to get a breakthrough, but that looks like it's not far away.
It's below 5%, I think, isn't it?
I've seen it as high as 8.6% in one of the by-elections.
On predicted seat changes, I think it's below 5%, but that might be enough to impact a little bit on the SNP.
I think the problem for the SNP, for instance, the next by-election, it's going to be twofold. One, they have turned on one of their own, Margaret Ferrier, the MP, after being punished for her error, was then campaigned against by her own party to remove her.
Yeah,
that will upset a lot of people.
Will it really?
For her. Well, of course, she's known locally as a hard-working and conscientious MP.
But she was. I mean, it was almost like if you invented the most appalling imaginable conduct that a politician could undertake during lockdown, she kind of thought, well, I can beat that. And then she went out and did it. I mean, you're describing people not caring about the reasons why she was recalled.
Oh, I'm certainly not saying that. But the reason she was recalled is because it seemed to be deemed that she did it deliberately and knowingly. And if you remember back if you look at the timeline,
it's a slightly odd conversation. Tell me a bit about your own personal political history. Did you leave the SNP because of a personal grievance?
No, absolutely not. I did leave because it was a party I could no longer support when I realised there was a gaping hole in the finances and the ring-fenced funds were not in the accounts. So I raised my concern. And when I got confirmation from inside, at the very top of the SNP, that there was financial problems with the party during a phone call, that's when I knew my suspicions were correct.
Okay.
I dug into it. So yes, I left because
my little antennae, so reliable on. So that's got. I mean, I fully understand that as a reason for leaving, but it doesn't lead in any way, shape, or form to claiming that Margaret Ferrier is more sinned against than sinning.
No, I'm not, and I'm not even saying that. What I'm saying,
but you harbour great bitterness towards the SNP in its current form, clearly.
Well, no, it's not the case. I support independence. I only joined the SNP the day after the referendum in 2014, and prior to that, I had never voted for them once. I didn't.
But here you are.
I wasn't. It was their policy that I was supporting.
Yes.
Scotland as an independent
country. Are you a member of Alex Salmond's little party?
I am indeed.
Are you a candidate as well?
I was.
Yeah, you probably should have told me that before this conversation started, rather than relying on my Sherlock Holmes skills to work out exactly where you're coming from.
I told your researcher on the phone that I joined the SNP or left the SNP 2 years ago. Joined Alba. I have stood in a council election last year in Edinburgh.
Fine, I'm just taking a moment to reflect upon the brilliance of my instincts. That's all. David, take care, mate. We got there in the end. It's coming up. So, as a candidate for a rival party, lo and behold, you're critical of the SNP. Well, I never. You'll be telling me next that the sun's going to come up in the morning. 11:17 is the time. I said it, and you might have thought I was exaggerating. I forget who it was that said that covering Scottish politics can be even crazier sometimes than covering American politics. But maybe there's a phone in on that, or maybe there isn't. I don't know. But we're not having that one today. Today we're having the one about why Labour is essentially neck and neck with the SNP in Scotland, and quite a lot of answers are looking at it through the lens of Labour rather than the lens of the SNP, which I have to I have to say that I was not expecting that at all. Here's another one. I think the key reason for the movement is Starmer being someone that Scottish people feel that they can vote for. And another one from, I like this, from John in Northumberland. Scotland has had 400 years of English entitled right-wing oppression, and we're only starting to get it now. Maybe you, John. There's plenty that have been on that that platform for 400 years. Mark's in Motherwell. Mark, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Pleasure to meet. Hope your family's good.
That's very sweet of you. Thank you.
And it's one of the Harriers. But anyway,
Go on.
I feel like a Beatles fan.
Oh, bless you.
You're coming off the plane.
Yes.
But anyway, what I wanted to say was I think you're coming at the wrong angle.
Well, that didn't last. That love affair didn't. That bromance didn't last very long, did it, Mark? Eh?
No, I love you. I love you like a brother.
Yeah,
but,
carry on. Top man.
You know, but it's basically, this is not about the SNP, in my opinion. This is about the Scottish nationalist movement, or the Scottish. I've been a member of. I'm just shy of your age, and I've been a member of the SNP for 16. Not 16 since I was 16. Sorry, and I've supported their policies. I've disagreed with their policies. But at the end of the day, the reason I vote them is because they're the conduit to independence.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and I loved Alex Salmond, and I still do love Alex Salmond, but at the end of the day, you called it the small party. His Alapa party will gain votes, but and the Green Party will gain votes for Scottish independence.
Just pin down the decline for me. Why is the SNP declining in the way?
But I would totally disagree with that, James.
Well, what in terms of the numbers?
And because...
fair enough, you can do. I mean, it is only one poll, but I'm just going with Sir John Curtis's analysis and his description of...
Right, so the last caller was talking about the SNP MP, but the farce with Nicola Sturgeon, for example...
Yes.
That was just a disgrace.
But yeah, no, I get that. I mean, to be fair, whether it was justified or not, having forensic tents on your front lawn is an appalling look for a politician. Only Donald Trump would turn that into an increase in popularity, and then the financial irregularities and the rest of it. But she's gone now. Why are Humza Yousaf's numbers so poor?
I am so unsure because I actually do like.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm asking you, because I'm unsure as well. You're supposed to be here to help me.
That's why. Basically, see, after the farce with Nicola, the SNP membership actually went up.
Did it?
Because of support. The polls might not be going up, but...
membership doesn't equate to votes, does it? We've seen that with the Labour Party in recent years.
But can I bring the B word in?
You can briefly, but we're dancing around a lot. I don't know that we've pinned anything down yet, Mark.
No. I understand that. Basically,
the B word was basically.
The point I'm making is the Scottish independence isn't about the SNP.
No, I know. I'm just trying to work out why that is. That's my lesson of the last few years. And
right. So for example,
because it's the only avenue to independence.
It's the only conduit to independence. Yeah. Yes. So that's fine because. And I've listened to you for many years.
Thank you.
And you many years ago, I can remember you saying, "What does socialism mean?"
Yes.
Right? I'm a socialist.
I've already accused you of covering too much ground, Mark, and now we're embarking on an examination of the essence of socialism.
Sorry, James. Sorry,
That's
James.
all right.
But see if Scotland became independent tomorrow, I would be no longer a member of the SNP. The SNP is just a conduit to independence.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. So maybe. Okay. So are you suggesting then that? I mean, they've had long enough and they haven't done it, so it's time for someone else to have a go. All right. Well, I'm going to crack on just because I want to squeeze in some more calls before past, Mark. But I thank you for the kind words. I think we bit off a bit more than we could chew together there, mate, to be honest with you. But I'm sure that was my fault. Eileen is in Blantyre. Eileen, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James. just before I make my main point about SNP versus Labour in Scotland,
Yes.
I am still aghast at the Margaret Ferrier call.
Yeah, I was a bit taken aback by
what a
that.
disgrace.
Well, I was a bit odd, wasn't it? But on we go.
Well, my MP is Margaret Ferrier. And when she did that, I wrote to her.
Yes.
After Partygate, I wrote to her again. The lady had nothing, no remorse, nothing. And I made it clear to her. I stood outside a care home in -4 conditions, visiting my mum. And even with that, she did not apologise. She had no remorse. Disgraceful. And she's been collecting her high expenses. Anyway, moving on.
I'm glad you articulate. I got a lot of people texting in with very similar thoughts, but my antennae started twitching, and we worked out what was going on there, Eileen. And
she's
now
a disgrace.
We can now find out what you think's going on in Scotland at large.
She's a disgrace, and hopefully Shanks for Labour will be in very, very soon. So best of luck to Shanks and Labour. Anyway, let me try and say it as quickly as possible following the last call. The First Minister, in inverted commas, in Scotland, he failed. He was the previous Health Minister.
Yes.
He failed the patients of Scotland. He failed the nurses, the doctors and the healthcare workers. He brought the NHS. He failed on his targets. He failed almost in everything. He had the Edinburgh Hospital scandal, the Glasgow Hospital scandal where children died. He had the mesh scandal. He's got so much failure on his CV. Why then give him the keys to the country and let him fail our country? They've been promising smaller class sizes, still hasn't happened. Regardless of the needs in a class, 33 is an acceptable number? I don't think so.
Have you ever been an SNP supporter?
No.
No. I just wanted to clarify that.
I am a very proud Scot.
Yes.
Who wants to be part of the UK. Okay. I'm a very, very proud, passionate Scottish person, and too many SNP people don't think those things can mix. And they've been duped by Nicola Sturgeon, who's a very good orator, but there is no substance. And she's proven that.
She's gone now. I mean, the only reason I ask is because obviously your critique of the two leaders now of the SNP is going to be coloured by your political opposition to them.
No,
I think.
It's all by evidence.
I know, but
class sizes.
Yes, I know. I understand all that, but you don't like them either. You just accuse them of duping.
In the country.
Duping. But no, I know. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just telling you what I'm hearing. and that's fine. So if you had been an SNP supporter and now you were voting Labour, you would be, I don't want to say more interesting because that would sound rude, but it would be, your journey would be more enlightening to me, whereas someone who's never really liked them much at all telling me why you don't like them much now is not part of the journey of more people from the SNP to Labour. Is it?
Okay. I'll give you part of the evidence, James.
I don't want any more evidence. I'm just pointing out that you're not in the constituency that's under discussion today, the people who are changing their mind.
Yes.
Are you?
I am in the constituency where people are changing their mind.
No, you're not, because you haven't changed yours.
People are changing from SNP to Labour.
Yeah, but you're not.
Well, I don't want to change from Labour to SNP, James.
But we're not talking about people who are still where they were when they started. We're talking about a story of people moving. The SNP's era is possibly coming to an end in Scotland. You're not part of that process because you've always been on the other side of the road from the SNP.
But I'm giving you the reasons why.
No, you're giving me your reasons why a party you've never liked is unpopular. It's the same reasons you would have given me 10 years ago.
No,
yes.
Let me just make one point and then I'll go.
I refuse. I refuse to let you make one. But it is shocking. I'm shocked that I haven't let you talk for this long, frankly. You can't give me the reason why someone's done something that you haven't done. All you can give me is a theory. I've got my own theories. I've got theories coming out my ears. I want journeys. I'm like a Californian therapist. Thank you, Eileen. Take care. Zach's in Lancaster. Zach, why are Scottish politics phone-ins so bonkers?
I have no idea, James.
But on we go.
I'm definitely in the constituency you want to talk to. So I'm a SNP. I voted for the SNP in 2014.
Right.
I voted for independence.
Yes.
And I've been a sort of lifelong SNP voter, and I've now joined the Labour Party. I've chucked in my SNP membership, and I'd like to explain to you why, because I think it'll be helpful.
Yes.
So basically, my principles have never really changed. I'm a left-wing voter. Not the Corbynite left. I just want sensible left-wing policies, and I want them to happen. And I want the Tories to be out and not be able to do any more damage to the country with their neoliberal policies, which I think do untold damage.
Yes.
Now, if you're that coming from that position in 2014, what do? Well, obviously you vote for independence, you vote for the SNP. Labour was completely out of ideas. You want to be insulated from the damaging effects of English nationalism, in the south of England. So that's what you do. Now, I don't think there's an argument to do that. Instead, because it's the SNP now that are out of ideas, haven't really got a programme for how they're going to take things forward.
Competence question. Your support for independence hasn't diminished, but you think the plausibility of it may have done, and certainly the plausibility of it being delivered effectively by this iteration of the SNP. That's gone over the horizon for you.
That's absolutely right. So, I'm a soft nationalist. Yeah. I was never an independence at all costs person. It just made more sense at the time. And I still think Scotland would be a good independent country. And I feel completely vindicated in thinking that because of what happened with Brexit after we voted to stay, in the UK. But that's not the argument anymore. I think becoming independent now is a lot more challenging. The SNP haven't done anything to build the case, which is what I hope Nicola Sturgeon would do after losing the referendum in 2014. And so now I'm looking at the Labour Party and thinking, well, it'd be better to vote for the Labour Party and have Scottish Labour MPs trying to drag Keir Starmer a bit more to hold his feet to the fire, rather than voting for the SNP and just getting more of the same.
And the SNP, under your analysis, has essentially been twiddling its thumbs for 10 years in the context of independence. You forget how long ago that referendum was, and they haven't really moved the needle at all.
Yeah, and there's one more point on this. So, I think if Kate Forbes had got in instead of Humza Yousaf, I think that would have been different. Kate Forbes, although, a lot of people say she was more right-wing, she was intellectual enough to be able to take on the independence argument. I don't think Humza Yousaf has the intellect to, the intellectual credibility to make that case. And I think that's part of the reason why he's not very popular as well. And I say that as a Scottish Muslim. So Humza Yousaf should be somebody that I am drawn to. And he just doesn't do it for me at all.
That's interesting.
Not impressed with Keir Starmer either.
Sure.
I don't, his personality doesn't resonate with me. And some of the stuff that he says about Scotland has me absolutely cringing. But I feel like I can work with him. I feel like Scottish Labour MPs could work with him and try to get something concrete.
You are not in any danger, are you, of ever letting the perfect be the enemy of the good? You're like an uber pragmatist. And that's why your analysis is so interesting, is that you're looking at everything through the art of the possible, as opposed to the kind of, I don't want to say extremist, but absolutist approaches that typify so much politics, and so much Scottish politics as well.
And I think Scottish voters are pragmatic. I don't think they're wedded to a certain political party like people in England like to write in the newspapers.
Well, no, I might pick you up on that. I think that what happens is, and it's the same with almost everything, is that there are two rumps who are completely committed to one party or another, or even in the context of the SNP, who are either completely committed to it or completely committed to opposing it. And I think possibly they crowd out the conversation to the exclusion of I hate the phrase silent majority, but I think that conversation is so noisy that it draws all the attention, whereas actually people like you are probably much more significant electorally than they will ever be.
Yeah, I'd like to push back on that slightly.
Go on, this is very polite. I don't know where have I gone? Why is this all being so polite? Go on.
So I think it might look that way, noisy from the outside, but I think that actually where the electorate are they're not wedded to a party at all.
No, I was saying that. I was agreeing with you. Yeah. I was agreeing with you. I was drawing a contrast between the electorate and, if you like, the public shouting matches which dominate the attention and, of course, attract the media. I'm cracking on, Zach, because it is 11:32 and Thomas Watts is here with your headlines. It is 11:36 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where, as you have no doubt noted, the news bulletins have been led all morning by the apparent killing of the head of the Wagner mercenary group in Russia, Yevgeny Prigozhin. And I thought we'd get a sort of chapter and verse on him and the significance of this moment, because foreign news leading news bulletins is always significant, and this chap is a peculiarly significant figure in Russia in general, and of course the war in Ukraine in particular. Luckily, Keir Giles is available, the Russia expert at Chatham House and author of Russia's War on Everybody. So before we get to the events overnight, Keir, just give us a thumbnail sketch of how he came to be such a significant and influential figure.
Well, he became useful and influential for Russia by providing services that Russia needed. He's most closely associated with this Wagner mercenary group, but of course that's not what he was first famous for. He was behind the so-called troll farms in St. Petersburg that were attacking democratic societies around the world by trying to poison their information environment, mostly through social media. And of course there's a particular irony to that in this mutiny that he staged in June last year, Russia was complaining that he was so good at dominating media space. But of course, that's exactly what it had been contracted to do in the first place. So he's got a lot of different business interests. And it's just Wagner which has been the most prominent and probably the most effective in pushing forward Russia's state interest, as well as his own business interest, not just in Russia, of course, in Ukraine, in Syria, across Africa as well. That's what's really brought him to the headlines. And it's what set him up for this clash, this confrontation with Moscow over the way the war in Ukraine was being waged. He wanted it to be done more efficiently, more effectively than he thought the Ministry of Defense was doing at the time. That's what brought it to a head.
So I mean, he made a ton of money and started a private army, which turned out in many ways to be more effective than the Russian army is quite sclerotic, has been for a very long time. Is that why Putin tolerated him, because of his effectiveness in the field?
We're not exactly sure why he was being tolerated. Certainly he got away with things that other people wouldn't have done, not just criticizing the Ministry of Defense, but actually really quite serious stuff like kidnapping senior Russian military officers, beating them up, extracting confessions on video, etc. Anybody else would have been dealt with a long time before. So it was clear that he had some kind of protection from somewhere in the Kremlin, either Putin or somebody equally as powerful that kept him alive. And of course, the suspicion, as it so often is in Russia, that he had some kind of inside knowledge, some kind of compromising material that, if it came out, would embarrass severely somebody in the Kremlin, so he was being protected. Now, he pushed that to the limit and beyond, and the real surprise was that after he had mounted this armed mutiny to try and make his point, make himself relevant again with Moscow, that he survived, that he remained unmurdered for so long, which is outside normal Russian practice, and of course set a really dangerous precedent for anybody else that might have been thinking of picking a fight with Putin.
Yeah, pour encourager les autres.
Exactly.
So that's a sign of weakness then on Putin's part, is it? A rare sign of, or not rare, but a significant sign of weakness.
That's exactly how it was interpreted. People couldn't understand how he'd actually survived this, and apparently not just survived, but achieved some kind of deal with Putin, a pardon and his people being sent off to Belarus, which didn't actually work out as it happened. But then, of course, Russia has this long-standing practice of waiting and being able to serve revenge cold much, much later. We just have to think about what happened to Sergei and Yulia Skripal here in the UK in 2018, years after they thought that they were safe and everything was long over and done with. Still, Russia reaches out to kill them in one of the most theatrical ways possible. And that's a key element of this. It's making it plain to everybody else, exactly as you said, to encourage the others. And never mind for Russia that innocent people get killed along the way, because there were 10 people on this aircraft, including the flight crew, and they're just collateral damage as far as Russia's concerned.
You're not really entertaining any doubts that and indeed nobody is really, that this wasn't a deliberate act by the Russian government, by the Russian state.
The biggest debate in Russia at the moment moment is whether it was a bomb on board or a surface-to-air missile that took them out. Nobody's really thinking about any other explanation, especially looking at the video footage of the aircraft coming down. But the really striking thing about this, of course, is the way it's being taken as normal and natural for Russia. Like, this is a country that does this, and nobody even bats an eyelid. It's just an indication of just how far Russia has gone, how far it's regressed away from anything that counts as normal civilized standards of behavior.
That's such a great point. And it occurred to me in a different context yesterday when the news bulletins about the BRICS meeting just sort of casually mentioned that Vladimir Putin's not able to attend because he would be arrested for war crimes if he did. It is amazing how fast the world turns. If I can turn back briefly to the question of that you've made me think of, actually, by alluding to his facility for controlling media and social media in particular. How close to success was that coup attempt? Do we know or think?
When we think of, do you mean the coup attempt in June when he mounted his well, it wasn't really supposed to be a coup.
Right.
It was really supposed to be a challenge to the Ministry of Defense, and he was trying to make it very clear that he wasn't actually challenging Putin himself. So
a power struggle, as it were.
Exactly, yes. Right. It was trying to get himself back at the table and trying to make the point that the Ministry of Defense was making a hash of the war on Ukraine. He wanted Ukrainians to be killed faster and more efficiently than they were managing at the time. So in that respect, it was a mutiny rather than a coup, and it failed. It didn't get its objective at the time, but there was partial success in that he wasn't immediately murdered. Now I think we can say it's failed altogether.
Yes, and I mean, I guess it's easy to say now, but he's been a dead man walking ever since.
Exactly. Once again, it was everybody was surprised that he had survived, and now that surprise is no longer with us.
Finally, what does the vacuum he leaves behind represent, and what might move into it?
Well, if it's a challenge to Putin, then everybody else will be thinking very hard about whether they want to set themselves up in that space. But there's also, there's no vacuum where Wagner was, because that organization still exists. And that's still going to be a problem for Russia, because they were upset and annoyed at Russia even before this happened. And this is an organized group of well-trained, well-armed, very experienced military people who would, if they felt like it, be able to mount some kind of serious security problem for Russia. So how Russia continues to deal with that over the next days and weeks is going to be really interesting.
And we will watch with interest and quite possibly avail ourselves once more of your expertise. Before you go, Keir, is that your book that you have 3 copies of just above your right shoulder?
This one here, yes, that's Russia's War on Everybody. Yes, it's about how all of this stuff affects people here and around the world.
Good for you. Russia's War on Everybody, which I presume when you finished it, or certainly when you started it, you didn't realise that it was going to be of such urgent use to so many so quickly.
Well, the war in Ukraine is just an example of all of the rest of the stuff that's in the book, unfortunately.
And unfortunately, indeed. Keir Giles, many thanks, Russia expert at Chatham House and indeed author of Russia's War on Everybody. It's coming up to 11:44. Should we squeeze in another Scottish call? I do enjoy my Scottish politics phone-ins, but you've got to be in the right mood. I'll tell you that for nothing. Thomas is in Bridgewater. Thomas, what would you like to say?
Hello, how you doing, James?
I'm grand, thanks. How are you?
That's good. Oh, I'm fine. I can't nervous, but fine. Scottish politics it's interesting. They put it mildly, it's interesting. Yes. I was a member of the Labour Party. I gave up my membership, but I continued to vote for the party, and then I joined the SNP.
Right.
Now, and I'm going to stick with the party for the moment. The reason for the loss of support, I believe, is that the SNP were beneficiaries of a huge number of protest votes from people mainly in Labour, like myself, who were disenchanted with Westminster politics. And this, further, the return to Labour has been the disenchantment with Westminster politics has grown so much under the Tories that people will vote again for Labour just to get the Tories out of Westminster.
And because Starmer seems more plausible than his predecessor, presumably.
I'm not entirely sure about that. But he still gets the label of being a pale blue Tory up here, and he's pitted himself at odds.
But I'm trying to pinpoint the distinction, the difference, and why that would happen now and not in 2019.
Just as simple simply because of what's happened.
Just because things have got so bad
Yeah,
in London that now the priority of changing the government in Westminster is a bigger priority for some Scottish voters than independence or having a SNP.
Yeah, that's in essence.
I think that makes perfect. So just briefly, because I don't want to be late, I've been cured of this condition, but how sympathetic are you to observers of Scottish politics who have mistaken support for the SNP for support for independence? I always presumed they were handcuffed to each other, but they're not, are they? It's much subtler than that. It's much more nuanced than that. That's my big mistake.
Yeah, people don't understand it, but I'd just like to say in closing, I believe that unless there is a drastic change in Westminster, we get rid of the House of Lords and we get rid of first past the post. If that doesn't happen, then independence is inevitable.
Yes. Okay. It's just a question of when, and I guess you're looking at possibly a generational pause at the moment, given what you've just described. Thank you, Thomas. 11:46 is the time. It is 10 to 12. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I've actually, by complete coincidence, I've got Scottish showbiz royalty in the studio, straight off the back of a phone in about Scottish politics. So I'll ask Alan Cumming first before we get on to the main reason why he's here. Why are conversations about Scottish politics so febrile? Why is it so hard to plot a pragmatic course through the...
I think. I mean,
are you frightened of saying stuff? Because no, I know, because you've come out in favour of independence and you've campaigned with Nicola Sturgeon in the past. But it is even I cover a lot of politics. I cover American politics. Scottish politics phone-ins are off the charts.
What, because people are it's so partisan?
Yes, and because people fib and people accuse other people of lying, and everyone who says that they used to be a supporter of independence and isn't anymore, they get attacked for being secret Yuns. I have to check out what all these words mean.
Gosh.
It's a very interesting exercise.
I think right now, since Nicola resigned and the whole sort of scandal that's ongoing with this court case, criminal case about the money, I think I have to say, I think Humza Yousaf has done a very good job of calming the waters, since that very contentious election campaign as well for the new leader. But I just think I think we're very passionate people. And I think it's if you don't have the passion for independence, and if you don't believe that Westminster is not doing the best it can for you, if you don't believe that, then you, by dint of that belief, are very passionate as well. So it's just a lot of passion, I think, and I would rather that than people who are apathetic.
Couldn't agree more. As an observer who is increasingly up to date with what's going on and getting the hang, I think the big mistake I've always made is presuming that support for independence was handcuffed to support for the SNP, whereas actually what we're learning every time we turn our attention to these topics is more complex and
it's more nuanced than that. But I mean, it is mostly.
Of course.
I mean, but there are people who vote for SNP for what they've done for Scotland and the way they've made the Scottish education system, Scottish health system better than the rest of Britain. They vote for those reasons,
yes,
but they don't necessarily want full independence, and I respect that too.
Of course. You are here because, last time we saw you were on, full disclosure, we did the podcast together and we commented upon how many plates you generally have spinning at any given time, and here you are with an entirely new plate.
I know.
A co-producer of A Strange Loop, which is a musical like no other.
It is. It's insane. And I would say I would say I am a producer. I am a producer on it, but I am a producer because I was a super fan of it when I first saw it off Broadway. And then when it went to Broadway, I became an investor in it. And then they asked me to be a named producer. So now here I am, one of the producers of the London version, which only has 2.5 weeks to run at the Barbican.
And what is it that made you so?
I went to see it because I knew somebody in it, and I was just going to support them. A guy called Larry Owens who used to work he performed at my cabaret bar in New York, and that's why I went to support Larry. And I'm going to prefix this by saying truly, and I don't say this often, and as a producer, I'm here to sell tickets, I suppose, but it is truly one of the most brilliant pieces of theatre I've ever seen. It blew my mind, and I felt as, not just that it's a great piece of entertainment, but as sort of politically and socio-politically, I learned so much about what it's like to be black and what it's like to be queer and black, and just how much more of a nuanced and complex thing that was, and how someone who, like Michael, the man who wrote it's called Michael R. Jackson. His Instagram is the living Michael Jackson, which I think is hilarious. And how it's a truly authentic story about one man's experience, and how, but yeah, it's a universal story. It teaches you almost too much, about a world that I didn't really understand. I thought I had I think it's, and my big thing is, I think we often think, oh, that's a black show, that's not for me, that's a gay show, or that's a something show. And I just think we need to go and see shows that aren't about specifically our experience. That's the whole point of what culture can teach us. And this is a great show, and I've learned so much from it.
It's also very funny.
It's hilarious.
We should make that clear.
Bitingly funny.
So a young gay black writer who hates his day job decides to write a musical about a young gay black writer who is writing a musical about a young gay black writer who hates his day job.
Exactly. There's the strange loop. But also, he's an usher at the Lion King, and his name is Usher.
Yes.
So he's called Usher, writing a show about a man called Usher, who is an usher.
Incredible confidence for a writer to take these sort of conceits and just play with them.
Like, just balls of steel. But also, like, it's so... I mean, the best stories, I think, the best things in art and culture are always authentic stories about someone's experience. And that's exactly what this one's about. And it's taken a long, long time for him to get to this.
Yes.
To get to... Started off as a monologue, it went to Broadway. And, the other thing is, I'm not like poo-pooing Broadway or whatever, but this is not the kind of show you normally get on Broadway.
Sure.
It's a show with 6 people in it that are all of colour. It's about queerness, blackness, even like fatness, and it went to Broadway, which is a miracle in itself, considering most of the content on Broadway does not deal with those subjects, and if it does, it's usually in a kind of light, slightly frothy way. It won the Best Tony Award. It won the Pulitzer Prize. It's a miracle in so many ways, as well as being a great piece of work.
And how do you get involved in something like that? Do you pop backstage and say, we've got to take this to London, you guys, and I'm just the man to do it?
We are going to Broadway. No, seriously, I went to see it when it was off Broadway. I went to see Larry and the cast and just met them and did a photo. I, posted on my Instagram and stuff about how much I liked it. I knew when it went to Broadway, I knew the people, the producers.
Right.
They reached out to me to ask would I like to invest some money, and I said yes, I would, to help it. And then they said, would I like to be a named producer? Because they had a few sort of celebrity producers to kind of help put the word out. Me being
you notice it on the posters, don't you?
Yes, and I'm the sort of the token white person, which I really like. The same thing happened when it came to London. So I'm here to sort of, I'm also here just because I'm en route somewhere else. But there's only 2.5 weeks left.
So till the 9th of September at the Barbican.
Yes,
get yourself down there.
Yes, do. And what is it again? StrangeLoopLondon.com.
It's got a button. Did we just use the button? Fantastic.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Fantastic. Potty mouth coming in the studio. We've actually got to use the dump button. So I'll do the email, the strangeloopmusical.com.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's where you go to get your tickets.
What else are you up to, briefly?
I'm shooting a show. I've been doing some, the SAG strikes on in America,
yes,
but it's
course.
actually, which I'm very supportive of and very excited about the way it seems to be going in terms of we're back at the negotiating table. But I think people really understand what the point of this strike is and why we've got to get parity. But I'm just bizarrely, I'm shooting 2 things that are not SAG things. I have a documentary series, one for Channel 4 about the Royal Scotsman train, which was such fun. I just finished that. And I'm doing a thing for the Discovery Channel where I go around meeting people who've built their own paradise homes. So that's hilarious.
Plates. Spinning plates.
Many
plates galore.
Many flights as well.
Indeed. Alan Cumming, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to see you. StrangeLoopMusical.com at the Barbican until the 9th of September. And, the people that write copy for press releases and posters and adverts always say things like a musical like no other. But as you've communicated.
It truly is.
It really is.
Yeah,
it really is on this occasion. It is coming up to 11:59 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. So, that means it's Thursday and it's nearly 12 noon, which means it is now almost your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction not ordinarily available anywhere else on your radio dial. If you want to contribute to this week's Mystery Hour, the number you need is 03456060973 to ask a question. And of course the number remains... I'm embarrassed now. I'm doing my spiel when Alan Cummings is sitting there looking at me with a slightly blank expression on his face.
What is it you're going to do?
It's like people ring in with questions and then other people ring in with answers. And,
I see.
And hilarity ensues.
Like a sort of community quiz.
It's exactly kind of, but not quiz questions.
Answer.
More like why does that happen, or how do pigeons coo with accents? Yeah, of course you can.
How do I get my phone to? It's done.
It's
a
not
new
like
thing.
no.
Is
It's
it not like that?
No, it's not that. Flipping heck, honestly.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Mystery Hour with James O'Brien.
3 minutes after 12 is the time. It's very hard to explain Mystery Hour to people who aren't familiar with it, as we just sort of proved. But luckily we don't need to, because you are familiar with it. And here it is, your weekly opportunity, etc., etc. Don't forget there's a prize. It's quite exciting, actually. You can win a Mystery Hour board game, which is brilliant. I probably don't mention it often enough. I only mention it on Thursdays. Problem is, I've got so many other stuff. I've got so much other stuff to promote. Books, tours selling out. You better hurry up on that one. But I'm not talking about that now. I'm talking about the game, the board game, the Mystery Hour board game. And you can win one if you provide my favourite contribution of the day. It really is that simple. Question or answer. Whoever tickles me the most will receive a Mystery Hour board game. You can find out more about the game at mysteryhour.co.uk, and you can find out the full terms and conditions for this very grown-up and official competition at lbc.co.uk. It's 4 minutes after 12, and Mystery Hour is upon us. Should we just crack on, and then you can work it out, rather than me? Yeah, let's just do it. Freya's in Peterborough. Freya, question or answer?
Question.
Carry on.
Why do people develop allergies at any age?
That's a good question. What do you mean? They're not innate, are they?
What I mean is...
No, I know what you mean. I'm not that stupid. I mean, they're not there at birth, and then they just stay there for the course of our life. So I developed hay fever quite late in life. Some people develop asthma late in life. Well, it's because of exposure to stuff, isn't it? It is.
I had Chinese all my life up until age 8, and then I found out I was allergic to 2 key ingredients.
Yes.
And then in January, I found out I had celiac disease, so I can't eat gluten.
Oh, I'm sorry. So why do allergies appear later in life, or at various points in life?
Yeah.
Okay, you're on. Why do people develop allergies at various points in their life? 5 minutes after 12 is the time. Lucy is in Greenwich. Lucy, question or answer?
Hi, James. It's a question, and it's about the natural world.
Good.
Mammals are the only animals that don't seem to be that brightly coloured.
Mammals?
They don't have blue or pink, yeah. Fish, insects, reptiles, they're all really colourful.
Not really. No, some are. I mean, crocodiles
some
are.
No, some aren't.
Just fish and birds. What about fish and birds are colourful?
Fish and birds. I mean, it's
insects.
I know, it's with mammals, it could be
What about a cheetah? What about a leopard?
A cheetah?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I guess, but they're not blue or pink, are they? Like birds or fish or insects could be.
No.
And I know that, it's almost like you can't expect the natural world to ignore those bright colours and not go after them for dinner.
Yeah.
But at the same time, how do they get away with it in those types of animals where they have got really brightly coloured coats or whatever?
They are. Well, I mean, they look like flowers.
Well, some look like flowers. They try and disguise themselves for breeding purposes sometimes, don't they?
Yeah, well, so they're less likely to get eaten if a predator thinks it's a flower.
So you don't think it's something to do with the fact that mammals couldn't have that sort of colour pigmentation in there?
Well, if a mammal was bright pink and it was trying to hide from a golden eagle, it'd be toast.
But what about a fish that's bright pink and trying to hide from something that wants to eat it?
It's blending in with the coral, isn't it?
Is it though?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Sure.
Yeah. If you go to, I do quite a lot of snorkeling, Lucy.
Yeah.
I was snorkeling just a few weeks ago in Greece, and if you go from, fish change according to the light, of course,
Yeah.
But if you're in an area where the ocean is sand or rock, you don't come across the really bright colours.
So you think they have it because they have, or they're able to have those colours because they're more able to hide from predators?
Yeah, I think the tropical fish, by definition, are going to be where there's a lot of coral around. So they'll be blending in. You see, with the. Why is everyone sending me baboon's backside? I suppose it's a very bright. I mean, people are. I've never seen a baboon. Some people are not using the word backside either. Thank you, Matt. But so that's an example of a mammal that has a very bright body part. But I don't know that is helpful for the question that you're asking. I think
what I'd really like to know is if it wasn't for the predatory type of thing, could fur actually be able to be pink or green or blue?
Of course it could.
You reckon?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, if there was an evolutionary advantage to being a bright pink rabbit, then there would be loads of bright pink rabbits hopping about.
So what are your qualifications, James?
I'm quite strong on evolution. I'm quite strong on evolutionary adaptations.
So they might have been evolved out of mammals,
But it's usually the same answer to all these questions. So why is a crocodile the colour? Well, crocodiles don't really have predators.
Yeah.
But
they don't. Do they?
But no, they do.
So
I mean, they're not.
pink.
They might, but no, because they probably get eaten by an elephant. But the answer is that the fish that are that colour live longer and therefore breed more, and that genetic mutation gets passed on to the next generation of fish, and that's why they're all so colourful. And if they were living in an area where being that colour was likely to get them eaten, they'd have gone down a different evolutionary avenue.
So you're convinced of that answer, are you, James?
I'm beyond convinced.
All right, I won't let you put it on the board then. I'll take, and you can have that round of applause.
I think I'm going to take it, actually. I think because there it is. I don't decide that. That's the algorithm. I just decide. It's ChatGPT listening to what we say and then deciding whether or not I deserve a round of applause. Lucy, thank you. Mind how you go. 9 minutes after 12 is the time. Gregor is in North Ayrshire. Gregor, question or answer?
Hello, James. It's a question.
Hello, Gregor.
First of all, I just wanted to say, thank you so much for everything that you do.
That's very kind
it's brought untold hours of joy into my life.
Gosh, what a lovely thing to say. Thank you, Gregor. I appreciate that. I really do.
Thank you. My question is sort of also evolution adjacent. It's when we're up somewhere really high, maybe in a precarious position, and we look down, our legs give way, and I want to know why. Because if we came from the trees, surely, sort of evolutionary speaking, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It kind of it exacerbates things.
Well, I mean, you say we came from the trees, but that was a while ago now. And I think before that, we came from the water.
We didn't have legs then, though.
No. So just describe what you mean. So you're in a very high place.
Yeah. Well, so, for example, I really enjoy climbing and I enjoy mountaineering. A couple of winters ago, I was mountaineering in the Lake District, and we were up the side of a really, really kind of steep, icy slope.
Yes.
And a couple of fighter jets went past, as they kind of tend to do in that area. And I got a bit of a fright, and it made me look down.
Yeah.
And I looked at the big drop underneath me, and suddenly it's like the muscles in my legs just fully relaxed, and I had to dig my axe into the ice to keep myself from falling all the way down. And it's happened a couple of times where I've looked down, and my knees. And
have you spoken to? I mean, where was there ice a couple of weeks ago?
Oh no, a couple of years ago.
Oh, a couple of years ago. And you've spoken to other climbers and mountaineers about this, and they recognise the phenomenon.
I think some people get it. Some people are less.
But I'm just checking it's not just you.
It's not just me, no. Or you get it sometimes when.
So your knees go. Your knee, the muscles. I've never expected. Why is Keith nodding? You've never been up a mountain in your life.
Or when you're up really, really high, you're up some sort of building, and you go onto an area that's maybe got glass underfoot.
Yeah.
Or kind of it's open underneath, and
your legs go wobbly.
And your legs go wobbly.
Okay, so why do we get wobbly legs in high places?
Exactly that.
That's a really good question, because, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. The last thing you want when you're up a mountain is wobbly legs. Even I can work that much out.
Exactly.
Right, you're on. Thank you, Gregor. Ridge is in Benfleet. Ridge, question or answer?
A question, please, James.
Carry on.
Every week, or every 4 weeks, we put out a yellow box at the end of our driveway full of glass.
Yes.
And in common with probably every other household in the country.
Yes.
And every pub or club or anybody else, they're all putting out these used bottles, and we're allowed to leave the lids on, and wired glass, Marmite glass. It's all in the same box.
Yeah.
It's contaminated. What can they use? It's about 1 million tonnes a month. What can they do?
From your place?
No, from the whole country.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, from the whole country. It's probably about 1 million tonnes. I worked it out roughly.
Can I ask how you worked it out?
Well, so the population of 60 million people, roughly 4 to a family, so that's
4 people,
15 million.
Yeah, per family.
Yellow boxes.
Yeah.
Divide by 5 to get it in 100 weights.
Right.
And it came to a lot. It's about then I added
about 1 million, isn't it, by my calculations? That.
Yes.
Yes.
And then you've got every club or pub.
Night spot.
All putting out these. They
Masonic lodges.
Yeah, everybody.
All of them. So where does it all go?
Is it any good? Do they use it?
Well, they must do. I'd be a bit peeved if they don't. It's a right old palaver, isn't it?
Well, so would I be, because you're allowed to leave the lids on, and if you look at a Marmite jar, that's black glass or nearly black, and a yellow lid, and I see it happen all the time.
So what are they? I mean, what are they making with it? I mean, I think they get it up to such a high temp. Oh crikey! I can't believe I'm having a go at this one, Rich. Honestly, I'll never learn. They get it up to such a high temperature that all the impurities in it just get burnt off. You see?
You reckon? Yeah.
Well, it's all I've got, mate. I mean, I wouldn't put any money. I wouldn't put any money on it. I wouldn't put any money on it. But I'm just thinking, if they get it up to such a high enough to melt glass, then a lot of the impurities are going to burn.
Yeah, but then it's all going to be different colours. I mean,
but is it though? Because the colours could be impurities.
Yeah, I don't know.
Nor do I. Now you got me.
Yeah.
Right, you're on. I shall find. What day is it for you? Mine's Wednesdays.
Thank you.
No, what day do you put it out? What day do you put the recycling out?
Oh, sorry, it's a Wednesday. Yeah.
Yeah, same here. There you go. Small world. 12:14 is the time. How do you develop an allergy later in life, or at like random points in your life? Why? I took that one, but you might want to add to it about the bright colours and mammals and what have you. Why do you get wobbly legs up mountains? And what actually happens to all the glass that we put out for recycling every week?
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien. Call 0345 6060 973.
12:17 is the time. You are listening to Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien. Questions still in need of answers are about allergies, wobbly legs and glass, but there's room for plenty more. Don't forget there's also a... What was it called? Was it a NatWest Bank or Wibbly Wobbly Wall chart? Do you remember that? You used to get... remember they were trying to encourage children to open bank accounts? You got given loads of free stuff. I went to Lloyd's because you got one of those rolly money banks. Where you put a coin in the top of it and it rolls down, and according to what size the coin is, it drops into the hole, so it sorts your money out for you. I loved that. But I think my sister went to the NatWest and she got a wibbly wobbly wall chart. Is that right? I want to have something like that for the board game. I can't call it a wibbly wobbly board game, but I wish I had a little pithy little catchphrase type for the board, for the Mystery Hour board game. Like that. No? All right. Well, anyway, you can win one by being the favourite contributor of the week. 12:18 is the time. On we go. Craig's in Cannock. Craig, question or answer?
Hi, James. It's a question, please.
Carry on, Craig.
Right. So you know how you microwave metal on the inside?
You can't put my microwave is metal on the inside and the outside.
Yeah. So why can't you put metal into it?
Because it's a different sort of metal, I think.
Surely if it was that, though, you'd be in a situation where the companies that make all the cooking implements
would use the same metal. Yeah, that's not the right
type of metal that would go in there.
That's not the right answer, is it?
No, I don't know, but I don't think so.
No,
it's obviously they do it that way.
It's a bit rubbish. Are you sure it's still true? Are you sure it's still true about the bag? Because it was back in the day, but can we not? Is it not all right to do it now?
Well, I know my wife's got one of these. Well, had one of these cups with, when they've got the gold foil around the rim where you drink out the cup.
Gilt.
That's accidentally been put into the microwave once, and I saw it sort of starting to spark a little bit.
And it
took it straight out.
Okay.
As soon as I saw it like that, so it's sort of that's a recent microwave. So
Oh, all right. Well, I think
even if it is the case that they've solved it now, I mean, why was it back in the day that was the case?
Couldn't do it. So the metal, the waves, the microwaves are going through whatever is in the microwave. But how can they do that without going through the metal that is the microwave?
Yeah. Because I'd have thought if it was such an issue with metal in general, they'd make the inside of some sort of plastic or whatever.
What I like about your question is that when I saw it on the board, I thought it's a little bit like, why don't you see white dog poo anymore? But actually, you're proper fascinated. You're proper curious about this, aren't you?
It's just weird. Logically, it shouldn't be the case. So in my head.
I have to be careful on this, you see. I can't be dismissive about questions that feel a bit like hardy perennials when your passion for knowledge is so clear to hear. Craig?
I'll be honest, I've attempted to read up on it and work it out myself by looking it up online before, and I just don't understand the answers.
Well, no, and also they haven't come at it specifically enough for you. They might have had a crack at explaining why you shouldn't put metal in a microwave, but not why the metal that the microwave is made of is fine.
Yeah.
Right, you're on. All right.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Why? But you heard the question. I don't need to repeat it. There's a text. A bit ambitious, isn't it, to want a mystery hour, a jingle for your board game when you can't even get one for Dory's watch? That's quite a good point, actually. 21 after 12 is the time. Marie is in Marlow. Marie, question or answer?
Actually, it's Annie.
Is it? Where did we get Marie from?
Oh, it's Anne-Marie, but everybody calls me Annie.
So you said Anne-Marie?
Yeah, they got cut off a bit. It doesn't matter.
No, and it does matter. These things are important. I want you to feel cherished.
I answer to most things.
It's all about customer service here on Mystery Hour.
I know all about that.
Well, there we are. Thank you. There we go. Because Anne-Marie, question or answer?
It's a question.
Yes.
I'm a redhead,
yes.
And through my life, when I've had operations or anything to do with anaesthetics, pain, etc., I always felt a lot of pain. So I looked it up, and I still don't have the answer. Why is it that redheads, we have a very high pain threshold, but we need more anaesthetic in operations?
So. You I don't really understand the question. So what do you mean a very high pain threshold? Do you mean you can put up with more pain than other people?
Yes.
I think that's true. I'm married to a redhead, so that must be true.
Oh, there you go.
Also, she has the bath.
Either love them or hate them.
Her bath is like a volcano. It's like volcanic lava. The temperature. Are you like that as well? If you don't mind me asking. So if I get into the shower after her and she's put the dial on, I think I'm on fire. I jump straight back out again. So that would be pain threshold. I think there's a difference between men and women, but you're telling us that redheads go in extra gear.
Well, it depends if you're a redhead.
Well, I'm not.
Well, there you go then.
No.
There's other things though as well.
But you also think, yes, but extra anaesthetic. You need more. Doctors have told you that you need more anaesthetic than non-redheads.
No. This is written down. It's actually written in the
Lancet.
Lancet, sorry.
That's quite. No, that's all right. That's what I'm here for. So you've seen it written down that redheads need more anaesthetic than non-redheads.
Yeah. The consultant I saw last week, because he gave me an injection, I was on the ceiling. When I went back and I said, please, if you put the anaesthetic in slower, it doesn't hurt. But if you ram it in, you're on the ceiling. And then when I went to see him last week, he said, oh my God, it's the woman I hurt. And the conversation arose. And he said he'd looked it up, and yes, it has to go in slower. We need more
for redheads. Slower for redheads?
Yeah.
Well, you live and learn.
You do. And our teeth are not pure white. We've got a slight yellow tinge to them.
Right.
We have more veins, little veins, nerve endings in our veins. So if you were doing laser treatment for my varicose veins,
right,
horrible things.
We're covering a lot of ground here, Anne-Marie, aren't we?
And the second time he did it, he didn't put any anaesthetic in, and I literally told him to stop, and I got off the table.
You literally told him to stop. I thought you were going to go with something a little more exciting then when you used the word literally. I thought you were going to say, I literally punched him in the face, but you literally told him to stop.
I actually wanted to serve his head on a plate, but I didn't do that.
No, there's rules about that sort of thing. Right, well, we will find out.
I just want to know if somebody knows.
Well, so do I now. That's how. But I'm only going to get you one answer. It's going to be about the pain and the anaesthetic thing. I can't. I don't want to go near your varicose. I'm not going near your varicose veins.
No. But then you can actually be nicer to your wife because she's different but wonderful.
I could not be nicer to my wife. That is actually that's a behavioural and physical impossibility. But maybe I'll just scream a little. I'll scream a little less when I hop in the shower and it's still set on her favourite temperature setting.
Why don't you just look at the thing and turn it down?
Because it's just the first thing in the morning. All right, flipping out. What is this? The Spanish Inquisition? I've staggered into the bathroom. I've turned
his toys out the cot.
Turned on the shower. I get into the shower and I go, oh blimey, that's hot. And then,
I'm trying to visualise that, Dave.
Well, I really wouldn't if I were you, Anne-Marie, seriously. You probably would you'd have nightmares. 25 minutes after 12 is the time. Jonathan's in Radlett. Jonathan, question or answer?
Hi, James. I've got a question.
Carry on, Jonathan.
Yeah, it's a topical one. So Lucy Letby received a whole life sentence.
Yes, she did.
So she'll never be eligible for release. So why in this country do we call some sentences life sentences with a minimum term, but the offender won't serve the entirety of their life?
They will, actually. You're mistaking a life sentence for a prison sentence. So unless the judge stipulates a whole life term, then you will become eligible for parole. And if it is agreed that you no longer pose a threat to society, you will be released into society, but always under licence, which means that if at any point the authorities decide that you do pose a threat to authority, even if you've committed no offence, you will be taken straight back to prison. And that stays in place until your dying day. So it's a life sentence. It's a life sentence, but not a life prison sentence.
It's misleading, I think, for some people.
Well, it is, but I mean that's the answer to your question. I see what you mean. It's a good question. It's certainly not a silly question. I know because I'm a journalist. You know, I think we get taught it or what have you. But so the sentence never expires. And anybody who has been given a life sentence, even when they're back in normal public circulation, they are still serving their sentence. They're still under licence and can be returned to prison at any time without having committed any further offence.
All right.
That is definitive.
Well
Thank you very much. I'll take that round of applause. Thank you very much. Rob's in Leicester. Rob, question or answer?
Answer, James.
Carry on, Rob.
Glass bottles.
Yes.
So there are a variety of things you can do with them. Glass is infinite recyclable, so it can be recycled over and over again without loss of quality.
Right.
So ideally, you want to keep the glass bottles intact and as clean as possible.
Oh. Okay.
So when the councils collect and segregate waste that's just bottles, that's why, because they want the material.
Yeah.
However, if it's not perfect material, or if it's been through the plant and it's crushed up, if you look at tarmac in a car park. I'm sat in a car park at the minute and I'm looking at tarmac and you can see it glittering slightly.
You can.
That is glass bottles.
Is it really?
Yes.
So
famous rod paintings as well. They tend to crush it up really fine and put it into the road markings just to give it a bit of reflectivity.
Interesting. So when Ridge's yellow box is taken away every Wednesday, what happens first? Will they be sorting through for bottles that are savable and bottles that aren't, or different colours, or not?
It will usually go through an automatic process. So it takes off, it goes through eddy currents on a conveyor belt system, sorts out any metals, any contaminants, and then there'll be a further pick after that of sort of manual getting out all the bits and bobs that people don't want in there. But usually it'll be straight through an automatic process.
And they'll try and rescue bottles for reuse?
Yes. So ideally, if I work in the recycling industry, so if I'm putting a container on just for glass, I will segregate it just for glass, and then we will take that in and send it to an area of the facility where we can sort of segregate it and keep it to one side effectively.
I like that. It's a fairly comprehensive answer. Qualifications, you've already told us, but we've got to go through the motions.
Area sales manager for a recycling company.
Fantastic. Round of applause for Rob.
Thank you.
No, thank you. That's top answer. I hope Ridge is happy. James is in Southampton. Question or answer, James?
It's a question, please, James.
What's Southampton like?
It's all right. It's not the worst place in the world.
No, because here's the thing, right? I've got this book tour coming up in November.
Oh, we are coming to see you, actually.
Well, Southampton is selling slowest. Why do you think that? So I've sold out. It's a big venue, actually, so I'm looking at percentages. Maybe it isn't selling slower. I've sold out the Union Chapel in... Hang on, I'm having a boast. Don't interrupt. I've sold out the Union Chapel in London. I've sold out Northampton. I've sold out Birmingham. I've sold out Bath. The others are around 70 to 80% sold out, but Southampton's around the 60 mark. It's not as big as the London. Do you think I'm not playing? I'm not reaching Southampton, James.
I don't. I've never been to the venue you're going to. This is going to be the first time we've been there. Right. So I don't know much about.
It's your fault then. You're not spreading the word, James.
Well, okay. Well, I will. Put it out there on socials that we're going. Get along to James O'Brien's.
Come along. It's going to be a top night. I'll see you there, definitely. What's your question?
Well, my wife's kind of a bit obsessed with you, so it's more for her than me. But,
all right, don't spoil it. We're getting on so well. You'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy it as well, James. I promise. But I look forward to meeting you both.
I listen to you every day. Anyway, a couple of weeks ago on Mystery Hour, somebody rang in regarding what do you see when you close your eyes or something along those lines.
Yes.
And that got me thinking about, okay, so if I'm imagining something, whether it's something I've seen before, something I see regularly, or something I've never seen, where do I see that? I can be looking at my living room wall right now, and I could easily just dream of a picture of you in the studio. I could think of my dog's face or something familiar to me, and I'm still looking at my wall. That's what I can see from my vision.
So you're talking about the mind's eye, as we call it, aren't you?
So where is that coming from? How can I sort of be looking at one thing
and imagining another?
Yeah. And the same goes for when your eyes are closed. I could close my eyes and still see a picture of my wife's face or my daughter's face.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, it's presumably. There's no way I'm going definitive with this. I'm just thinking out loud. But it's the same part of the brain. Or the messages, because all we're seeing is sort of lights and things, and our brain processes it into what you and I recognise, and so the bit of the brain that's doing the processing can probably work without the inputs and the stimuli, and still create in your mind's eye a image. But we're going to want a better explanation than that, aren't we? I think.
Well, yeah. I mean, even things I've never seen, I have no idea what your house looks like. So I could, or even without a description.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be able to picture my house. You'd be able to picture a house.
Yeah, just a house. Yeah.
But I mean, a random house that you've never seen. It's probably
no.
But you know what a house is. So a house, brain, house, image. I like that question. It's a tricky one, but hopefully someone listening will understand exactly what neither you nor I are qualified to fully articulate.
Yeah. And we do already have a board game, I'm afraid, so please write us out of the board game.
You could have given it to someone else for Christmas or something.
Well, okay. Well, yeah. Okay, we'll keep that option open.
Let's keep that option open as well. You could have two. You could have one for best. It's 12:32. Amelia Cox is here with your headlines.
This is LBC Mystery Hour with James O'Brien. Call 0345 6060 973.
12:36 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. It's Central Hall in Southampton on Thursday, the 2nd of November, for everyone who's asking. All three of you. What do you mean you're drying your hair, Keith? So Bath is sold out on the 1st of November. Birmingham sold out on the 4th of November. London, I can't believe we've sold out the Union Chapel in Islington on the 7th. Northampton, you can't currently buy any more tickets, but depending on some building work, there will hopefully be more tickets available. That's Royal and Derngate on the 5th of November. And then I've got Manchester at the end of the month and a couple of Scottish dates that I haven't announced yet, but are in the diary. I just can't remember when. And then hopefully a few more as well. And I may add another date in London, but the book's out on November the 2nd, and I'm completely relaxed about it now. It's properly finished. You know and I know. There was a moment before I went on holiday where I thought I was going to have to send the advance back, which would have been quite awkward given that I've already paid it. That would be my advice to aspiring authors. If you're lucky enough to get an advance, go out and spend it. It really focuses the mind and ensures that you actually deliver it. But now I'm getting excited about the tour as well. It's just fantastic. And I'm being interviewed on stage by really cool people. They're going to be really, really, really lovely events. It's one of the most, probably my favourite thing about writing a book is doing the doing the book tour and meeting people who come along. Speaking of people, aphantasia is a condition where you can't visualise anything. Just to go back to James's question, it's simply impossible to visualise anything. Quite a few people listening have it, but I'm conscious of that now more than I was before. But the question stays the same: when you can see things in your mind's eye, as it were, when you can imagine things visually, what is actually going on? 12:38 is the time. Ned is in Colchester. Ned, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on.
So yesterday I was listening to the show about musicians and Brexit.
Yes.
And you pondered something that reminded me as well about what makes one conductor better than another one.
That's a great question.
It is. And I thought maybe this would be for both of us, this one, because it reminded me of a story. Do you remember Van Halen?
Yes.
The epic 80s rock band. Their singer, David Lee Roth,
yes.
Right? Once hired the LA Philharmonic to do a session because he was doing some solo work and he wanted an orchestra and he was going to conduct them.
Right, yeah.
So he brings them all in. And now, I don't know if you can picture him in your mind's eye, but basically in spandex and sunglasses and lion's mane hair and what have you. So the LA Philharmonic take one look at it and go, oh my God.
This bloke won't know what he's doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no way. We're professional. We're the LA Philharmonic.
Sure.
So they have the morning session, and they give him a really hard time because they just can't take him seriously at all, right? So Dave's feeling this. He's thinking, I've got to try and, pull this back from the brink. So he sends them out to lunch, and while they all go out for lunch, he walks down to the string section and detunes one of the cellos.
Right.
And they all come back in, taps on it, goes right from the top, as we were, up they strike, going for about 5 seconds, tap, 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 stop, 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 stop. Second cello, you're flat. And they gave him a lot more respect.
That's a lovely story. I mean, you've kind of hijacked my mystery out with your own anecdotes, which is a bit cheeky, frankly.
Sorry, mate.
But I like it. It's a good story. I mean, I like it a lot. And therefore, what makes a good conductor versus a bad conductor becomes an even more interesting question. Because I don't want to be crass, but it looks the same to us, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I've played guitar for many, many years. And I did learn to read music a bit when I was at school. But I often wonder, you think, well, you've got a 30-piece orchestra. Obviously, you've got the score.
Yeah.
These guys are looking at it while they're playing at it. They go sort of look up to see what this person is doing, and then carry on what they're doing. And he's kind of pushing the, a bit faster, a bit slower, the dynamics of it and what have you. So I just think, what is it? Is it
what is going on? No, I mean, it's a great question, and we will hopefully get an answer to it because it's a very big deal that when the famous conductors command epic loyalty and fees and the whole shebang. Thank you, Ned. 12:41 is the time. Neil, mate, I'm in Norwich on the 8th. Neil saying, you seem to have missed out East Anglia with your book tour. I'm at the Epic Studios in Norwich on the 8th of November. I think I forgot to mention that. So don't worry. I know I could never forget. How could anyone forget? I'm a mid-morning radio phone-in presenter. I have to do a gig in Norwich. It's the law. I'll probably have a premiere in Anglia Square. Hugo's in Manchester. Hugo, question or answer?
It's a question, please, James.
Carry on, Hugo.
Why is a celebrity rider called a rider?
You mean the sort of backstage demand type thing?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I knew this once. Is it not contractual? Is it not like It's got more to do with the actual contract, the business speak, than it has to do with, a bowl of yellow M&Ms or whatever it is. Like all contracts have riders, as it were. So.
Oh, I see. I can see that.
That would work, wouldn't it? I don't know that I've got enough to hang my hat on.
I'll give you a round of applause.
No, I can't take a round of applause unless I can actually remember that has come up before or something like that. But no, I'll put it on the list.
Thank you.
Of course, you've now made me wonder whether I should have some riders in place for my for the coming book tour that I don't like to talk about. What could I have backstage at just a nice sandwich would be nice. Nice sandwich, perhaps, and a fizzy water. Right, you're on, Hugo. I shall find out for you. Backstage. Why are they called riders? Backstage riders, when you specify what sort of creature comforts that you want backstage. Steve's in Farringdon. Steve, question or answer?
It's an answer, please, James.
Carry on.
Microwaves and metal.
Yes.
A microwave has a magnetron, which is what creates the RF energy inside it at about 2.4-ish gigahertz.
Of course.
The metal box that the microwave is made of, including the mesh that goes across the front door, and makes up a Faraday cage, and that is grounded. So that's down to 0 volts. So that actually, the actual box of the microwave absorbs all of the RF frequency that isn't being absorbed by anything else in its way.
Yes.
If you were to put some metal in there, normally metal, if a metal's like a nice round shape, if you put like a steel ball bearing in there, it's unlikely to do anything at all, because all of the RF radiation that it absorbs and then induces a potential, an electrical potential into, will just be absorbed nicely back into the rest of the microwave and get grounded away. If you have something that's metallic, so it's basically an antenna which is absorbing RF frequency or RF energy, but has a point on it where it can basically release all of that RF energy to ground via an arc or a plasma arc, it will do so. So it's more to do with the shape of the metal that's in a microwave,
which is why the rims of
the
gilt on the rims of cups are particularly problematic.
Absolutely, yeah, because just their general makeup and the fact that they're just made of basically small pieces of metal within some kind of emulsion.
Yeah, I mean the central question you've already answered, which is about the oven itself being earthed and effectively a Faraday cage.
Yes,
that's a great answer. What are your qualifications?
I'm an aircraft avionic engineer by trade. Started off in the Air Force when I was 18, and part of my training over the years has obviously been to know and understand RF energy, and even so far as into microwave frequencies with radar and that kind of thing. So I kind of have an understanding of how that kind of thing works.
Love it. Round of applause, please, for Steve.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. It's a cracking answer. It is 12:45.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien.
It is 12:48. You know what you're listening to. Let's crack on with Mystery Hour. Questions that still need answers. Why do redheads have higher pain thresholds but need more anaesthetic than others? Why do you get wobbly legs when you look down from a great height? Why do you get allergies at different stages in your life? I've done that one. What happens when you imagine things? How can one conductor be better than another? What makes a good conductor? You got two violinists, and you can hear them both, and you know which one is better than the other one. You got two conductors. I've no idea. I know you can hear the orchestras and know which one's better, but what are they doing differently? So it's like bow technique on a violin, so what are they actually doing? They're all waving their arms around. One sounds like me. If I did it, it would sound like a sort of cat fight. And where does the word rider come from in the context of backstage demands? Damien's in Reading. Damien, question or answer?
Hi, James. I've got a question. I'm tempted for an answer, but I rang in with a question.
Good man.
Long time, first time, by the way.
Good man. Thank you.
Big fan. What's the determining factors going on, like what why you can get a sandy beach or a pebble beach, and they can be almost right next door to each other. What is determining?
Yeah, they can.
Like down in the Witterings, we've been on holiday a couple of times, and West Wittering is a lovely big open sandy beach to play football on or whatever.
And East Wittering.
Is
pebbly, isn't it?
both are very pleasant, but I sat thinking, why is this?
I mean, I don't even know why I'm thinking of answering it, but there's no, there's no guarantee. I mean, rock is different just because they're near to each other. What's underneath can easily be different because you can.
Someone did posit. Is it? The pebbles just haven't been in the water long enough to turn into sand, perhaps.
But also you walk down a beach and you see. Different formations. You'd might walk over some. So I don't know if it's that much of a mystery. Just because they're quite near to each other doesn't mean that they would be. So we just do. Why are some beaches sandy and some beaches pebbly? Really?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I like that.
Simple as that.
Thank you. Cheers, man.
No
I'll get it on the board, Damien. Why some beaches pebbly and some beaches sandy? I think we've done that before, but Mystery Hour reached a point years ago where we can't have box fresh questions every week, and if I can't remember the answer, then it still counts. Carl's in Exeter. Carl, question or answer?
Answer.
Carry on.
So redheads and why they have a higher tolerance of pain.
Yes.
Nobody actually really knows what tolerance of pain is, but they know what all the contributing factors are.
Excellent.
So we have a gene, or a lot of redheads have a gene called MC1R.
Okay.
And MC1R alters the way that we process different hormones and different vitamins. So we process vitamin K really well.
Right.
So redheads come from the north where we needed more vitamin K because we didn't get as much sunlight, so we process vitamin K really well.
Yes.
And also we process endorphins differently. And it's that link between endorphins and that gene that make the difference in pain. And there's been lots and lots of studies about it.
Yes.
And it's almost certain that it's true, but nobody can actually prove why it's true. And there's lots of interrelating factors. But almost all redheads have a particular gene, the MC1R. Almost all redheads have a higher pain tolerance because of that gene.
Right.
And also there are other things that they have, like we don't sense smell as much as everybody else. So we're much more highly tolerant to obnoxious smells.
Oh, it's another reason why my marriage is so successful.
I think that's why my wife struggles. So,
well, and do you know about the anaesthetics as well?
I know about the anaesthetics, and I know about the anaesthetics because I've just had shoulder surgery.
Gosh, I hope you're all right.
I'm getting better.
Good man.
I'm getting better.
Yes.
And I had a conversation with the anaesthetist beforehand because he walked in and went, "Oh, you're a redhead."
Wow.
And I said, yeah. And he said, I've read your previous surgery stuff, and you always react badly to the anaesthetic. And now I know why. Because you're a redhead. And so we have to up it. And we don't tolerate lidocaine very well.
Right.
So lidocaine doesn't have a lot of impact on us. And we need more anaesthetic. And then we tend to be a lot more feisty when we come out of anaesthetic because they've used more.
Of course.
And 2 weeks ago, I actually had an argument with the anaesthetist while I was still under. Because they have to use so much to keep us under that we come out a little bit feisty.
It affects your equilibrium. Well, perfect answer. Yeah. You've already told us qualifications.
I had serious shoulder surgery 2 weeks ago.
And I'm a redhead.
And talked with the anaesthetist beforehand and afterwards, because he was laughing with me afterwards about the fact that I told him he was wrong.
That's a lovely answer, and I think you should. Well, I hope that you've completely satisfied Anne-Marie with that. Round of applause for Carl. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, cheers, man. I love that. Liz is in Sevenoaks. Liz, question or answer?
I've got an answer.
Carry on.
It's about...
Right, we're going to try and sort your phone line out and come straight back to you, I promise. Robert's in Newbury. Robert, question or answer?
Answer.
Carry
I'm
on.
a conductor.
You are? Well, then I know which one you're going to answer. I mean, what's the difference between a good conductor and a rubbish conductor?
Well, it's slightly in the eye of the beholder. I mean, the job of a conductor is twofold. The first one is to make sure that, the 90 players in front of you are all playing at the same time to the same tempo. And for that, you need to be crystal clear as a conductor. So that's where you can be better than another conductor. You can be clearer so the players understand exactly what you're doing. But actually, the bigger job of a conductor is to interpret the music.
Right.
And musical interpretation actually is no right or wrong. It's a bit like a piece of art. Do you like it? Do you not like it? It's all about what you feel is right, and then you choose your interpretation.
And how do you communicate what you're feeling to the orchestra?
Well, that's what a rehearsal's for, and you tell them. You can say, I want you to.
So a huge part of conducting happens before the curtain comes up, as it were.
90% of it is preparation.
I had no idea. So you couldn't. So even if you're the best conductor in the world, you're not just going to turn up at the Berlin Philharmonic and knock it out of the park 10 minutes after getting off the plane.
No,
you've done You've done loads of rehearsing and told them exactly what they want, and essentially the conducting act of conducting is reminding them of what you've already told them that you want.
Exactly, and throwing your passion and throwing your emotion to them physically, so they hopefully react in the way that you want and play better.
And so that's why you can get very animated conductors, and sometimes
that's exactly it.
Well, that's a beautiful answer. That is absolutely perfect. Qualifications? You are a conductor.
Good. I am indeed a professional one.
What are you doing at the moment? What are you working on next?
Well, I do West End shows, but I also do lots of orchestral conducting with Russell Watson, amongst other people. So I do lots of touring, and I conduct all around the world. I'm a very, very lucky man.
You certainly are. Have a round of applause on me, Robert.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I could talk about that for quite a long time, actually, but it's a bit niche. I just always quite fancied it, but obviously you've got to be a brilliant musician. I thought conducting would be quite good for people who aren't that good at music, which is arguably one of the stupidest thoughts I've ever had in my life, now that Robert has educated us on what conducting really involves. Liz is in Sevenoaks. We'll try again on that phone line. Liz, what have you got?
Hi there. I wanted to talk about the visual imagery, not mine. So, basically, it's to do with memory. You can't conjure up an image that you haven't seen before.
It's going to be, even if you haven't seen a specific house before, you're conjuring up images that are associated with that word house in your brain. Your phone line's gone again. It's not your fault. I don't know whether you've been wandering around the house or something. Stephanie's in Port Talbot. Stephanie, hello, question or answer?
I have an answer for the mountain shaky legs one.
Oh, good. Carry on.
So basically, it's all to do with fight or flight and adrenaline.
Yeah.
So when you experience fear, we all get that adrenaline rush, don't we?
Yes.
So the adrenal system, which kind of runs adrenaline, lactic acid, everything like that, which makes your muscles move smoother and faster.
Yes.
That feeling of adrenaline kicks off your lactic acid system, which basically smooths the muscles and coats the muscles so they can move quicker and they contract quicker.
Right.
Because when you're on a mountain, you're not particularly moving fast. Well, you hope you're not moving fast.
Yeah.
Your body...
If you're moving fast, something's gone horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what that's doing is your body's basically preparing for that flight action, and
that's what's made your legs go wobbly.
It is, yeah.
So in fact, you get exactly the same response if you bump into a lion in the woods, but because your legs are now getting ready to peg it, they don't go wobbly because you're using the muscles immediately.
Yeah, exactly that.
Well, I never. Qualifications?
I did an aromatherapy qualification, which includes physiology.
Aromatherapy?
Yeah, so a huge part of aromatherapy is the adrenal system.
Of course it is. No, of course it is. Of course it is. And that's one of my favourite answers. I love that, Stephanie. Thank you. Have a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you. I tell you what, there is a significant number of redheads listening to this who have just had a truly revelatory moment. I mean, Nick in Edinburgh takes it furthest. He says, "This makes so much sense, James. I have red hair and I have twice, unfortunately, punched nurses coming out of anaesthetic, black eyes and all." Liz says, "Oh my God, this caller is describing me exactly. I swear at doctors and nurses when I'm coming round from an anaesthetic. So because you need to use more anaesthetic to get a redhead under, they come out punching. You live and learn. Those poor nurses." That's it from me. You're enjoying that, Shiv?
I did enjoy that, yeah.
You've not heard it before? I'm going to give it to... I give it to the last lady, I think. She just delighted me. Stephanie, Stephanie gets the board game this week. It was a bit of a tricky one. It could have been a few people. I could have given it to Robert, but I sensed he wasn't a massive mystery. I think someone had phoned him up and said, there's a question on the radio about conductors. And I don't think he quite knew what he was doing here. So I'm giving it to Stephanie, even though Robert's answer was brilliant. That's it for today. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player, Rewind Live Radio, or enjoy the whole show podcast, which might be coming to you soon in glorious Technicolor. I've got to talk to you about that. Remind me. You'll also find all of LBC's shows to catch up on, as well as the world's biggest podcasts. Rewind Live Radio on Global Player. Download it for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. Coming up at 4, Ben Kentish in for Tom, but now it's Sheila Fogarty.
When you've had have you ever had a general anaesthetic?
Yes, once.
Did you have anything specific afterwards? Obviously not punching nurses, but because twice I've had it, and on both occasions, as I'm coming round, I'm not hysterical, but like anxious, because as far as I'm concerned, my bedding is covered in slugs and spiders.
Really?
And I'm terrified.
I have had nothing like that, no.
Oh.
Well, you live and learn, don't you?
I didn't hit anyone. That's
no, I know. I mean, poor old Steve, that would be awful, wouldn't it? And poor Nick, rather, and the poor nurses.
That was fascinating. Thank you,
That's
James.
Miss Jo in a nutshell.
In it.
There you go.
In it, yeah.
There you go.
Is it Thursday?
Yeah, all day. All day.
News just in. It's Thursday. Stay with LBC. 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 Thursday. Stay with LBC.